So any disease or infection that is naturally transmissible from vertebrate animal to humans are known as zoonotic. Now, coronavirus is not the first zoonotic disease. Okay, up to 75% of new and emerging infectious diseases are zoonotic in nature. I'm talking about human diseases. And out of this, 70% are coming from wildlife. Whether it is Nipah, it is Zika, Ebola, SARS, MERS, and COVID-19, they have origin in wildlife. Why I'm building all this background is just to let you know that why controlling illegal trade of wildlife, why controlling use of cyber space for trade of illegal trade of wildlife is important for us, because it can lead to not just human health issues, it can lead to dimensions which are far bigger than the local level. It is a global scale, and it can trouble our economy in the way like coronavirus is troubling right now. Okay. Now, when coronavirus came into being, and when it was known that it is a zoonotic disease, okay, we were kind of a bit, I would say, we thought that maybe now it will draw attention towards zoonotic diseases, and now maybe people will deter from buying all these wildlife products. Okay. This was a survey which was done by a global survey agency, GlobeScan, with support from WWF. So you can very well see that in 2020 there was a marked reduction in people who said that they are likely or very likely to buy wildlife in future. Okay, so in 2020, because coronavirus was at its peak, it came down. But again, when in 2020, when again this survey was done, unfortunately, we saw that people again have started thinking of buying these wildlife products, either as medicine, either as some other product, as a decorative item or so. So all our hopes that maybe after coronavirus, humans will start looking at wildlife trade in a different way. They will try to not buy these products. Unfortunately, that these are not coming true. So that is what we saw. Okay. Now, just to check that the next question that I would like to address, that people might feel that, but how big is this threat? Okay, so just imagine that illegal wildlife trade, for those who don't know, is the fourth largest criminal activity across the globe. Fourth largest. Sometimes it doesn't come to our attention because we are paying attention on other activities, but illegal wildlife trade is fourth largest criminal activity. It fuels corruption, it threatens biodiversity, it increases public health risk, as we have seen in the case of coronavirus. And also, which is not written here, but there are many areas where the money which comes from illegal wildlife trade has been seen that terrorist groups or insurgent groups in many part of the globe, they are using this money for their nefarious activities. So again, this is a problem. It's a huge problem. It's a global problem. Why it is important for us, for India? Because India is a storehouse of approximately 6 to 8% of global biodiversity. We have just 2 to 2.8% of global landmass, but we are extremely rich in global biodiversity. And we have 6 to 8% of global biodiversity. And that's why, because we have these treasure, that's why it is important for us to protect it, because all poachers, wildlife traders, they look towards India as a source. This is a wildlife map of India. If you will see this map, you will realize that each and every corner of our country is rich with wildlife. Second thing I would also like to mention here, that we are doing extremely good as far as wildlife conservation goes. Okay, please don't go with the naysayers or those who write different columns that everything is going down the drain. It is not. We are doing extremely good as far as wildlife conservation is concerned. The number of tigers are increasing, number of leopards are increasing, number of elephants are increasing. In fact, it is increasing to such an extent that it is creating conflict in few areas. But anyway, the point here is we are extremely rich in biodiversity, and that's why we need to save it. Now, but what is happening to this? Okay, this again was a report which was done by Traffic globally, and here you will say that in tigers, number of tigers being poached, they are highest in India, obviously because we have 70% of tiger population, so this number is likely to be more, but it's really high. So we need to be alert about this. Let's talk about marine species. Okay, India is extremely rich again in marine species, but India is third largest catcher of sharks. Okay, again, a statistics which often stuns many people, because sharks are not consumed in India. Sharks are mainly poached for their fins, which are being used for making soup in East Asia and Southeast Asian countries. So India is third largest catcher of sharks, where majority of sharks are being caught for their fins. Again, so we are losing our sharks quite rapidly. Okay. And then coming to the point we under discussion today, that internet has emerged as a new frontier. It has emerged as a new challenge for enforcement agencies, because all these wildlife traders, they are using internet based different groups, uh, um, end-to-end encrypted services, messenger services. Everything is being used for trading of this internet for these wildlife products. Now they have got a new frontier, which is very easy. You can connect to a larger group. There is a kind of anonymity which can be maintained. So illegal wildlife trade on internet is increasing across the globe and also in India, and that's why it needs to be controlled, combated. It needs to be reduced. Okay, I'll just give you a few examples, few studies which traffic did across the globe and also in India. Okay, and where you will find that how much is the level of use of internet or internet-based companies for illegal wildlife trade. This was one study which was done, which found that just in 12 Facebook groups, okay, there were 200 species which were being traded. Okay, there were 1,521 animals which were being traded using these internet groups. Okay, there was again a study done in Japan, again, where we found clear-cut evidences, clear-cut documented evidences, where again internet-based companies are being used for trading, for open trading of ivory. Okay, again in Southeast Asian countries, as I said, in for example, there was one study again done in Vietnam. Okay, where also again we found that e-commerce companies are openly being used by these traders for contacting new customers, for exchange, everything. And eight major species are being traded in just that group, that time period where it was done. Okay, and this shows, again I was referring to a globe scan study earlier. Okay, so this again showed that similar study was done again, and it was asked, this is a post COVID study done in 2021. Again, it was asked to many people, especially in Southeast Asian countries, that how likely or how inclined you are to buy illegal wildlife product, or have you bought illegal wildlife product in last 12 months. And this was the response. Overall, 7% said that yes, they have bought these articles. It was high in Vietnam, slightly low in Thailand, in China, United States, and in Myanmar also. But more important for today's discussion is, lot many of them said that they bought all these products from the internet. Okay, so that shows, that confirms the study which was done by traffic in these countries, that internet is emerging to be a large source of buying, of trading these species at the global level. Okay, one study was done by traffic in India also. We just try to find out that what is the online trade of pet animals on internet, pet birds on internet. The study, the results will shock you, that just within 40 days when we did this study, we found we followed 10 groups, uh, uh, 8 in India, one in Bangladesh, and one in Pakistan also. You wanted to see what is happening there also, and which had more than 1,45,000, these 10 groups, 1,45,000 group members. And we saw that 27,937 animals were being offered for trade in these groups just in 40 days of survey, and many of them were from the protected species. CITES listed 1, 2, Wildlife Protection Act is related species. So everything is being traded. Everything is openly being traded on these platforms. Okay, so as I said, that internet provides a very safe platform for traders. Reach is enormous and the risks are minimum. I'll just wanted to show you two videos that how they are being traded. So this was one video which was shared with us, and this has leopard and lion, leopard and tiger claws. Okay, illegal product in India, but just imagine that how many animals must have been killed for this. Okay, again I was talking about pangolins. So this one is again, we got a message on an instant messenger site where people are showing that they have a live animal. This is the length, this is the weight, and that's why these videos are being circulated and being traded. So that is how internet is being used. uh, there are several instances where, for example, internet was found on social media, internet was found on YouTube. People were trading all these wildlife articles. So this is what is happening. I have just 5 minutes left, so I'll quickly tell you that what are the solutions, what traffic is doing at the global level and what traffic is doing at the national level. So now we realize that if we need to curb these kind of article or use of internet for these products or use of e-commerce sites, social media for this, we need to work very closely with industry. Okay, and industry means that those who manage this. Okay, and then only we can control this. So we created a coalition at the global level, and this coalition was WWF, Traffic, and IFAW. Okay, the three conservation organization, they came together and they started talking to the industries. And fortunately, we will just imagine that 43 coalitions, 43 internet-based companies, they joined hands with Traffic and with IFAW and WWF. And these are these companies, and these are the who's who of social media, internet, Facebook, Google, Instagram, um, Baidu. Okay, everything was there, and they came together to make this coalition. What we are doing under coalition? Coalition has primarily 5 approaches. First of all is policy harmonization, where we harmonize policies of all internet-based companies so that the use of internet for this can be reduced. Then in-depth training of the staff of these companies. Then user education, which is very important. Mobilization of citizens to spot if they can find something on internet. And then machine learning or NLP. But I'll quickly tell you that what these all are. So that's first step is we discuss with all these companies to harmonize their policies, to harmonize that these needs to be reduced, these needs to be made illegal on your platform also. And all the companies who have joined this coalition, they have harmonized their policies to large extent. Second, as I said, that another aspect is to train staff of these companies so that they can also check what is happening on their platform. So we have an online wildlife learning education training system. So far, more than 2,000 company staff have already been trained. And this is an outlet, we call it outlet. So this has been created. Then we have a supplementary training and reinforcement material, which is also being produced by the coalition. Then, as I said, that user awareness is global awareness or user awareness is important. So we work with these companies, Alibaba, Pinterest, in India with Google and other companies to spread awareness about these things. Okay, so that people don't use this platform for these activities. Okay, then as I said, what is the outcome of this? For example, if you go to Facebook, okay, now Facebook has aligned their policies. So if you go to Facebook and if you type something like buy tiger online, for example, so suddenly there would be a pop-up which will say that this is a protected species, you don't need to buy it. Similar things have also been done or initiated in Instagram. I don't think it is still there in Indian chapter, but it is there at the global level, and slowly it will be rolled out. So that is to alert everyone about this. Then machine learning. So we have deposits of several photographs which we give to these companies. We also give them some kind of I would say main words, catch words, which can be used. Okay, so machine learning, if they have devised some technology, if they see that something like this is being traded, so they can immediately check it, find out that this is elephant ivory, this needs to stop. So that kind of machine learning is also being used. Okay, then as I said, that we are also developing a group of spotters. These are common people, college students who are being trained by coalition to just go through internet whenever they are using it. If they find anything objectionable, they need to raise this thing. Okay, and then there is in the website, which is End Wildlife Trafficking Online, there is a platform, there is a landing page where if you feel something or if a person feels something is going on, they can alert or they can report this crime. So this is also being done. Okay. As I said, that WWF Facebook has come together to alert people that this is the live animal trade is banned on these platform. They cannot wild animal trade. They cannot do it. So this is thanks to Facebook. They have brought this feature into being. Okay. And just to in a snapshot, if we say that what coalition has done in just 2 years, 3 million illegal posts were taken down. Okay, so that is a huge number, and we are so thankful to all internet-based companies who have come together for this. Okay, other than that, there were some 45 online wildlife products, which were 45,000 online wildlife products, which were flagged by spotters, by wildlife spotters. So this is what is happening, and as I said, that staff is being trained, several activities are being done. In India, this is the last slide. In India, we have started rolling this out in 2019 in September. We did a big meeting in which internet companies joined, in which law enforcement companies joined, in under Ministry of Environment and Forest. And we did a meeting where everyone came together to discuss these points. Recently, few days back in August 2021, again a follow-up meeting was done, again where law enforcement agencies and internet companies came together to see that how this can be controlled in India. So this is one major issue. There is a video. Gaurav, do we have time to play this video? 2 minutes?
Yeah. You can.
Okay, so this is just a video which can just show that what I hope you can hear the
No, we
voice.
cannot hear the voice. You can just see
Uh,
the.
I don't know, sorry. So I don't know what how to do that.
Is second only to
Yeah, we
habitat
can hear
loss,
now.
the biggest threat to species. Each year, over 20,000 African elephants lose their lives to the demand for ivory. Every day in South Africa, 3 rhinos perish at the hands of poachers for their horns. And today, more than ever, tech companies and users have also become targets. By shifting across e-commerce and social media platforms, traffickers can sell illegal wildlife products without being noticed. They're able to reach more people, exposing platforms to more risk and unsuspecting users to the global trade of illicit products and goods. But your company can prevent this from happening. The Coalition to End Wildlife Trafficking Online partners with global tech companies to keep the internet free of illegal wildlife trade. Together, we're aligning wildlife policies, empowering staff with detection tools and emerging trends, refining algorithms to identify suspicious wildlife products and sellers, and educating users on what not to buy. Join us in our industry-wide approach to end wildlife trafficking online.
Thank you. So this is my presentation. Sorry, I made a very hurried presentation because of lack of time today. But these are my contact details displayed on the page. If there is anything which you would like to know more about, if enforcement agencies are also there, if colleagues from enforcement agencies, they want to know more about this, because we are working very closely with several enforcement agencies, and you can see that there were a lot many enforcement agencies which were present during this when traffic organized this meeting. So if there is anything which you would like to know about it, please reach out to us. Internet companies or industries, if they want to do something, please reach out to us. We are already working with FICCI on several issues, that how we can bring more agencies together for this. I would just towards the end, I would just say that protecting all these species is everyone's job. You and I are involved in this, and we need to protect, and we should make sure that internet doesn't become a platform for trading all these products, all these wildlife articles. Thank you. That's from my side. And
Thank
sorry,
you.
2-3 minutes more. Yeah.
No. Thank you. You well covered all the important points, Dr. Badola. And uh, while we are very happy to see your presentation, but the unfortunate part which you just told us that we thought that the world has changed after COVID, but when we see the statistics shared by you is we didn't change. So that is one part, and the next part is the coalition part is very impressive when all the industry has come together to joining hands for putting a curb on this illegal trade. That is that. One small question, Dr. Badola, is that so yesterday we had a very good, interesting session on the dark web, crime and how to deal with them. So while all these bigger companies they are on the surface internet, how do you deal with these illicit trade on dark web? Do you have any are you taking any help from the enforcement agencies, or do you have a dedicated team working for that?
Very relevant question, Gaurav. But let me also comment on the first part of your comment, that we realized, frankly speaking, I come from an enforcement background, and we realized initially that, oh, internet companies are not doing enough, and I think they need to do enough, kind of thing. So that was the approach which we had. But I had a meeting with a policy team of Facebook in a couple of years back in Washington D.C., and there the team which and the gentleman there, he was a very passionate wildlifer. But he told me, he said that, see, during that time, he said, see, we have more than 2 billion posts, okay, every day on Facebook. 2 billion posts, and during that time it must have increased many folds now. So it's fairly impossible for us to control all these. And then we realize that yes, probably even if somebody wants, it becomes very difficult. And it's wonderful that if enforcement agencies and companies they can come together and work together. And we are so glad that internet companies, they came really in big way, and they supported us. So that is one. But Gaurav, you very rightly mentioned that this is just a part of a trade which is happening on open internet. Okay, there is lot many things which are happening on dark web. So we are taking support of enforcement agencies, which is as high as CBI. There is a Wildlife Crime Control Bureau which works under Ministry of Environment and Forest. So they are actively working on this, how to get all these things. So we are collaborating with them again, that how to control this. They also have a very wonderful program where for few months all these and it is known as WildNet, run by WCCB, Wildlife Crime Control Bureau. So they also check that what is happening on this, and if there are something, we seek help of internet companies to control this. But I would say that all of us needs to be very alert. You as a user, we as enforcement agencies, and internet companies who are hosting this, everyone has to come together. Then only we will be able to control this. Otherwise we are frankly fighting a losing battle. So that's thing. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation. And what I believe is that if we could somehow jointly make it a mass movement, then and making people aware of it, I think it will help us. And there is one more question coming from a participant. Mr. Sachin Patil is asking that most of the
Yeah,
violation
okay.
seems to
Gaurav,
be.
I read this, so let's
Yeah,
save time.
yeah, yeah.
So there are two questions. One is how someone can join Hands to Traffic as volunteer. As you saw my email addresses, please reach out to me. Okay, I would also say that internet is also a very good platform to connect. The right kind of people can also connect. When poachers can connect, then I think we can also connect. For example, I'm quite active on social media, on Twitter, for example. So lot many people share their information on Twitter. They get information from me on Twitter. So if you can please reach out to us, we'll see that how you can join as volunteer. The second question is very important, that what is the difference between urban as well as rural or remote areas. Frankly speaking, the way internet is penetrating, okay, how the digital India movement is taking internet to the rural areas. Even rural areas unfortunately are being impacted with this. In fact, we have seen that people are approaching to people who are there in rural areas and rural and remote areas, which are closer to forest areas and closer to wildlife. They are using these phone services, internet services, and asking them to poach an animal, send it to them via a courier service. Okay, and they will transfer money digitally. Okay, so this is also happening internationally. Even cryptocurrencies are being used for transfer of money. So unfortunately, the penetration of internet to these rural areas is polluting in a way these areas also, when I say about wildlife crime. And as I said, that even digital payments are being used. Okay, but as I said, again, I'll re-emphasize that this also provide the good forces also a good platform to connect. So please connect to other enforcement agencies. Please talk to me. You can reach out to me on phone, on internet, email, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you can. If you find anything illegal, please highlight to us. We will take action, that's for sure. And if you want some kind of information, then please also reach out to us. I'll just Gaurav, if I have 30 seconds, I will also add that internet. I'll just give one example. So what happened is few last year, how internet can also help. I'm just saying that a few years back, last year, I think, I just tweeted on Global Shark Day that in India, the same statistics, that India is the third largest catcher of sharks, and shark fins are being used. Okay, and I tweeted about it on Global Shark Day. One of my junior, who is an Indian Revenue Service officer, he reached out to me after reading that tweet from my handle. He said, "Sir, I was not aware that even shark fins are being poached. Okay, and I'll have a look out. And which areas do you feel are the hottest spot of this?" We highlighted few areas, and you won't believe there was a seizure, massive seizure of shark fins, which was done. So I often say that just one tweet led to that seizure. Okay, because then awareness. So we can use this platform to spread awareness also. So please reach out to us. Please feel free whenever you have something, and we are always there to help.
Thank you, Dr. Badola, with this last message that if the dark forces, if they can use the internet for their own purpose, we can also use internet to enable our forces and enforcement agencies for the right thing. So thank you very much, Dr. Badola, for being with us, for sharing your time and expertise on this particular topic, which is very, very different topic for all of us. And we will also ensure from our side that we will connect dots, will help, enforcement agencies also. Whatever queries we have, we will, direct to you and, further seek cooperation from your side. So thank you very much for being with us. Thank you.
Wonderful, Gaurav. Thanks, everyone. And thanks all the participants. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
So moving next to the in the agenda, we have with us Mr. Pawan Desai, who has already joined us to take a lecture on the cyber hygiene. Just would like to briefly introduce Mr. Desai. He's an alumnus of Jamnalal Bajaj Institute of Management Studies and IVLP fellow. Mr. Desai has an experience of more than 25 years in the security risk management domain. He has been involved with initial setup and growth of Mahindra Group Consulting Company in the domain of cyber security before co-founding Midcat Advisory Services. Currently, he is the CEO and responsible for Midcat P&L and future global aspirations. He has led several high-profile, complex, and multi-dimensional risk consultancy assignments with industry leaders across verticals for more than 100 plus blue chip companies. A distinguished ex-Indian Navy officer with specialized in submarine operation, he is an acknowledged thought leader in security risk management and a stunt supporter of convergence of cyber and physical security domain in future. With this brief introduction, I would like to invite Mr. Pawan Desai for taking the lecture. Mr. Desai, over to you.
Good afternoon, Gaurav. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I will just like to share my screen. Just let me know if it is visible.
Yeah.
Is it screen is visible?
Yeah, we can see a screen.
Is it in slide share mode?
Yeah, we can see. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good afternoon, participants. Thanks a lot for joining today. Today I'm going to talk about, I think, first of all, a very, very interesting, we just finished a very interesting session by Saket Badola. And yes, I think the crux of the matter was, if the bad people can combine, why not the good people and the enforcement and everybody else can combine? And I'm going to take that that message in my session also, in the thing that cybersecurity hygiene, when we talk about, a lot of work is happening by cybersecurity professionals, the IT teams, IT security teams, cybersecurity teams, government. But ultimately, it boils down to people, it boils down to employees, it boils down to you and me. How do we react? Unless we understand this problem well, this problem is not going away. I think this message was given by a lot of our previous speakers also. So that is what is the background, which the session I'm going to start with. So I think if we think cybersecurity is a technology problem, I think we neither understand the technology nor we understand the problem. I think that is the, if that we can understand, if we can imbibe this philosophy, I think we are in the right path to solve this problem. Otherwise, if we are always going to think technology will solve the cybersecurity problem, we are never going to achieve anything, and the problems are going to get bigger and bigger as the day progresses. And we are seeing the number of attacks which are happening, the names of the companies which comes every day. I think a few years back, if any cyber attack used to happen on a company, it was a taboo. It was a big thing. But nowadays, it is not even. We don't even worry about it. Yes, 250 billion records got stolen from Marriott, or something happened to some big brand. It's just a way of life with us. So that is going to continue. It is going to increase as the days progresses. So that's what is important. That cybersecurity is not only the technology problem. It is much, much bigger. It is all about you and me, and it ultimately boils down to hygiene. And that is what is going to be the focus of my session today. So what has changed? I think I'm not going to talk about COVID. I think that has been spoken about by empty number of times. But I think very interesting thing has happened. We are in a state of a new normal. When I say a new normal, what I mean by that is, new normal is new for everyone. So nobody can. Then there is no precedence of the state we are in currently. So nobody has handled it. So there is no expert. There is no novice. There is a no. Everybody is a newbie. All of us are in a state of a constant change, constant learning, and everybody is facing this kind of situation for the first time in their lifetime. So very, very important. And things are changing every week, every month. Regulations change, things are changing, travel restrictions change, regulations are changing, IT controls are changing. So many things are happening, and that is going to be the new normal. The new normal is going to be a continuous change, and the pace of change is going to be very, very rapid, and it is what we have not witnessed. So the bad part was the COVID, but the good part is because of this, lot of, I think, digitization has happened. It has expanded to IT, non-IT. Every process we talk about has been digitized now. So the race to digitize has happened. So because of this race to digitize, everybody wants everything to be digitized, whether it is required, not required, whether it is secure, not secure. But every day you see billions of apps which pops up, and we are adding. So we started, because COVID was happening, we started working from home. Because working from home, we wanted Zoom meetings. Then the background started coming in. When we wanted background, there was a noise on the background. Now we have additional softwares like Crisp and all. Lord, we want to have noise cancellation software. So we are adding as the days are progressing. We are adding so many softwares, application devices, and evolving regulations are also evolving along with that. So what is basically happening is there is a huge proliferation of security challenges. I'll just take some numbers. I think few speakers have already spoken about that, but very interesting. I think the cloud-based attack. So there is always a point that is cloud secure or not secure? But because now I am putting everything on a cloud. Every organization is, so why should I, as an attacker, focus on organization? I should better focus on a cloud service provider, because the ROI is much better for me. Attack from on homes, home routers, and home, this is increased drastically. So earlier we were protected in a corporate environment. Now we are working from home. So home attacks have increased drastically. Uh, one more interesting, cyber attacks are happening at every 39 seconds. I'm talking about a major cyber breach. I'm not talking about small attacks. So since I started my presentation, I think 5 or 7 minutes back, we already would have almost 10 to 12 big attacks. So that is the rate at which we are handling the entire uh, uh, domain of cybersecurity. It's a very, very complex and a very, very challenging domain. Uh, Also, attack surface increase. Earlier, it was a very, very protective. We were cocooned, we were a fish in a pond. But now, when after the new normal, work from not from home, now everybody wants work from anywhere and everywhere concept. There we have malware, we have ransomware, we have IoT attacks. Believe me, IoT attacks have not started yet, because we are now connecting our OT systems and other applications and other gadgets to our IT networks. OT attacks are going to start. So IoT attacks is what I feel next 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. That is going to cross the number of IT attacks which are happening. So that is where the danger lies, because the IoTs, the OTs which are made, either they are legacy systems or the new ones which are not made keeping security in mind. So that is what is going to be the next danger area. So you might have your surveillance CCTV camera attack may happen from there, your visitor management system, your maybe Fitbit, or whatever you wear, your wearables, your cars, anywhere, all your OT devices, we are going to have, will have start getting attacks from that surface, which we have not uh, very well equipped as of now with. We have non-standard ports. We have phishing attacks. I think that has been spoken a lot. We have malicious codes, because we are digitizing in a hurry. We are in a race to digitize. So most of the softwares which are being created are not secure. Software policies are not implemented in that. So there are malicious codes, there are backdoors, there are many, many things in that. And there are unknown vectors. So I think there are so many things which we are not even, like before Corona, if you tell somebody that pandemic can happen, people will laugh at us. And people will say you will have to work, maybe pandemic will stay for a day or two, or maybe 5 days, 10 days. It was unheard of. Now we have accepted the fact that maybe second wave has gone, third may come, may not come, we don't know that, but this is a new normal kind of thing. So there are various unknown factors which we'll have to be ready with on that. So ultimately, to join everything together, we are moving towards a borderless security model. So no organizations have now security perimeter. Earlier there were perimeter. IT security people were able to protect the organization. Now that doesn't exist, and because of this new model, I'll say the liability or the end responsibility has come on you and me as users, and that is where the cybersecurity hygiene plays the maximum important role. Because in earlier scenario, a user makes a mistake, still we could the extent of damage was restricted. But in the new normal, the amount of damage which the user can do, because it is sitting anywhere, detections are difficult, is going to be much more. That's why this cyber hygiene becomes very critical. So I think this can be more on the lighter side. I think cyber attack may become actual in future to come with OT coming in. Actually, I actually heard one of the news this thing where the killing happens through a stamping machine. You have your factories where you have stamping machine which are automated. So there were the parameters were changed. Cyber attack happened on that, and the parameters were changed. And when the worker was working on it, the stamping machine actually banged into his head and crushed the head. So that is considered to be one of the first killings of maybe from cyber attacks, which is the first one to have. But we are going to see more and more attacks which are going to happen in future, which is there. So coming back to users and hygiene, I think the attackers have become very smart. As Saket was saying, they are connecting very well. They are technologically savvy, and we are seeing growth of many frauds which are there. I'll just pick up few of them, which all of us may have got these mails or SMSs. This is the one is a free gift fraud. Whenever we do our Paytm, whenever we buy something from Amazon or on Flipkart, they're always looking for unlocking our price, or maybe 25 rupees cashback, 50 rupees cashback, or some gift or something. We are always looking for that. But that is being played by attackers, and they actually give you a voucher which exactly looks like maybe Amazon mail, which is there. So be careful whenever you're using that, because that can be a phishing mail, or that can actually be a malicious, you might be clicking on a malicious thing which is there. Second is a thing which is coming up now, is a gossip scam. Like I've just put Steve Jobs is actually alive, because everybody will get curious. I think 6 months back, another campaign where I think it was told that Xi Jinping died, and that kind of thing which happened, and it did a lot of rounds on internet, which is there. Very interesting. There's something called catfishing. Catfishing is basically rogue profiles which gets created. Uh, as of now, maybe the research shows that 1 in 20 relationships, when we talk about the new way the youngsters make relationship, maybe not youngsters, everyone make relationship, 1 in 20 is happening online. And by 2025, it is predicted that every third relation, so 1 in 3, so 33% of the relationship will be initiated from online resources. So that is going to become active and predominant, and that's why there are various rogue profiles which gets created, and they basically harass you, blackmail you. And so we have to be very careful and on what kind of exchange of maybe data, exchange of information we are doing with these kind of profiles. So a lot of things we need to see in maybe a very attractive image, maybe which is not matching with the kind of communication which is happening. A lot of different pointers are there to watch for on that thing. Another thing is, as humans, we are always very inquisitive that what is our IQ, and we are always interested in finding our IQ. We all want to be that 120 plus, 140 plus IQ. Unfortunately, most of us are not in that domain, but we always want. And there is a research which shows that during the lifetime, usually your IQs do not change drastically. There are certain exercises, but it drastically do not change. So I'll urge that do not try these kind of tests which are there, because it will ask for a lot of information. A lot of inputs will be taken from you, which may be used against you, and it may give you IQ rating of 136, 144, which are all most of the time it is fraud. So there are sources where you can do it, but I think stay away from these free ones, which gives you that. Accounts canceling scam. In between, there was a rage against Facebook. Almost, I think, 5 million people in US left Facebook because of mental health and all those kind of thing happened. And during that time, this campaign picked up, and they used to send a link that have you cancelled your account, please fill in your details, and we will ensure that your account cannot be misused and all that. In between, people moved from WhatsApp to Signal, and that is where again it happened. But these are various new scams which are coming up, and this is dependent on users. IT security cannot do really much if we really indulge in these kind of activities and these kind of if we click on these kind of links. I think when then uh, uh, nobody else, we have to blame ourselves on that. Moving very quickly on this, I think the research, this was a Frost and Sullivan report which came out in earlier this year. More than 50% of businesses were attacked. Now we talk about not only big companies, MSMEs, big companies, everyone was attacked, kind of thing. And they are compromising business. So BEC, which is a business email compromise, is one of the favorite tool for attackers nowadays, which is used. So they are going to have a sob story. Now you will get indulged because the situations are tough. There are people are going through bad times. Your vendors, your service providers, your people, everyone may have problems. So they misuse this kind of a situation, and they create scenarios. They may be requesting for money. They may be asking for details, and a lot of frauds are happening in this domain on that. When the COVID started, I think when vaccination started, there we had almost 1 in 5 website which was giving information about COVID and information about vaccination was fraud. It was a phishing website, and of late we are seeing increase in websites which are coming with anything on Afghanistan. So if you want to find out anything more on Afghanistan, this is the area which attackers are using, and a lot of the phishing websites have been created, and this gets created, and these are very topical. So we cannot train ourselves only don't click on COVID sites or don't click on vaccination sites. You have to look for topics. You have to look for what kind of things are happening, and attackers will usually use those kind of sites, and be aware of. Don't click on those sites unless you feel it is coming from a genuine uh, media house, or you can if it doesn't, you don't find anything fishy. So be extra careful when you're, and especially when you are giving out certain information on that. The ransomware, so ultimately what happens is when you click on these things, malware happens, and ransomware is one of the biggest manifestation in today's environment. I think the big companies like Cognizant got hit earlier this year, and there have been many attacks which you hear every day happening on medium, small, and any kind of a company. There are various technology controls which are there. Companies are spending millions and billions on this, but ultimately it's about that one click which you and me do, and which bypasses the entire security control. It is basically the Lakshman Rekha. Ultimately, we are coming out of Lakshman Rekha rather than other way around. So that's why the protection cannot happen on that. Looking at the dark web, I think very interesting. Again, from the earlier thing, there are a lot of chatter which is happening, and it is happening across. So if you see on various devices like your printers, your routers, your cameras, lot of chatter is there on your VPN devices, your smart gas meter, your electricity meter, or on your education system, your tutorials, your free, your Udemy, so many portals which are there. So much of chatter is there because these are the sources. Everybody wants a free, maybe a course which needs to be done. So nothing is free in this world. So if you are doing something free, you are giving out certain, because either you are giving out your inputs, which marketing people which you are going to use at a later date, or it might be fraud site, or it might be a phishing site where it might misuse it. So a lot of things are happening in various domains. So it is not only restricted to IT and IT devices on that. Going ahead, I think we are seeing a huge increase in procurement frauds. Again, they are using now vaccination drives are happening, sanitizers, what you said, return to work has started. So many consumables are going to be used. So people, companies are there which take advances, don't pay back. Material never reaches the site, and we are hearing where we talk to a lot of companies. So many of these are happening. They give you great discounts, but it doesn't end up. It's a becomes a fraud at the end of the day. And then your teams are working remotely, so they are not able to collaborate that effectively as it was being done in the earlier days. And you tend to be less attentive when you're in remote structure. So maybe certain inputs or certain things which certain eye for detail doesn't remain on that. So that's what is being used by. I'll just skip which is there. In addition to that, employee frauds are increasing because believe me, everybody's in a stress. So work from home is no more sort of a people are not happy with that kind of environment, and people don't know what is going to happen. So it's a sort of a ambiguous future kind of a situation which is there. High risk. There is a now again the economy is picking up, but we are hearing in a lot of places that again a wave of what you said job cuts is again coming back. So people are under severe financial crunch, and most of the teams, most of the companies, barring few great big companies, good companies, most of them have not got increments for last couple of years. People are under severe financial crunch, and during this time, if employee gets an opportunity, the chances of the crossing the line are very high. So that is something which we need to be very careful of, which is there. And adding to this, I think remote working, we cannot put maker checker controls which were there earlier during the working environment. So most of the frauds are happening with connivance with external and internal parties, and which is actually creating a lot of frauds. Avenue for frauds are increasing on that. So basically, it's a just to sum it up: complex environment, social engineering, remote working, and maybe the technology, which is ransomware, Trojan, backdoors attacks, and insider attacks, which are there. Combined is a recipe for a disaster for any organization unless we have technology controls in place, and also we do lots of trainings and continuous engagement with our employees. And I think that is where the hygiene plays the most important role, because there are newer frauds happening every day, and unless we take care of that, this menace is not it's not going away anywhere on that. With that, I think just to very quickly take you to the another aspect of that. Problems are there, but the delays response is also a problem, because your response team are also now remotely working. They are also not able to connect dots when the problems are happening. Government agencies are overstretched. If you see cybercrime, what kind of workload they had 2 years back and what kind of workloads they have, the amount of load has increased phenomenal. And it is not, and the kind of skills or kind of resources have not been able to compensate to the increase in the workload. So they are stretched. They are able to only focus on maybe the major ones. They are not able to focus on the minor ones or the trends and the maybe telltale signs on that thing. Security budgets are cutting down. That is one of the worst thing which can happen. So in this kind of a situation, if security budget comes, you may not be able to actively profile, detect, monitor to get the potential problems. So that is another issue which we are facing. And criminals have increased every size, because the global downsize is happening. Anxiety levels are high. Employee engagement level is low. It is very easy for people to cross the line, and people who are maybe a IT professional, a great IT professional who does VAPT for organization, which is a white hat hacker, just him to cross over and become a black hat, it doesn't need any skill set change. It is just the maybe moral changeover which he or she is doing. It is very easy in current situations and times which is there. So just to, I think, maybe sum it up with the whole thing, this is asymmetrical warfare. Every organization on every individual is bound to fail. Somebody in the cybersecurity domain told me that there are only two kinds of people which exist. One are people who know that they have been hacked, and other are people who are not aware that they have been hacked. There is no third person or organization. So either you have been hacked and you are aware of that, or you do not know that you have been hacked. But the attack has already happened on you. So it is asymmetric warfare. You are going to fail at some point of time. So it all depends on our resiliency, our resolve, and our maybe what you said, agility, and maybe are I'm not getting the right word, but how vigilant we are, and so that the damage can be minimized. So that is what it is. So where do we go from here? So we have to create an environment or a structure for organizations where all of us, you, me, can work from anywhere and everywhere. We have to take care of unknown because the risk vector from unknown is going to be very, very high. It has to be a seamless coverage. So it cannot happen that certain activities can only happen in certain premises, controls. It has to be a seamless. So if anything is happening, if any fraud is being detected across the value chain, it needs to the SOC team, GSOC team, or security operations team. We need to have a culmination or merging of that so that they can pick up the telltale signs and they can anticipate any issues which can happen. We need a unified view. No longer we need that IT security will have a different view, cyber physical security will have a different view, risk has a different view. Now we need a unified view, and then only we'll be able to do protection. We need to reduce human intervention. When I say human intervention, it is about detecting a control, because now the sensor points or the scale of network is so huge that it is humanly impossible to detect it. So we need automated detection techniques, which have been deployed in most of the companies. And the dependency on human has to reduce. So humans should be involved only in action-oriented activities, not on detection of fraud, which is there. And we need to adapt continuously. This is going to continuously move. There are the animal what we are now and the situation which we are in now. It is going to be a continuous movement environment, and we have to adapt continuously. So will not have to get stagnated at one point of time. So this is a new beginning. This is my last slide. The working from home anywhere is going to be a normal thing with COVID, without COVID, or this thing. So employees or the end point, maybe your vendors, third parties, and people are going to be the key for people. So how they react, how they behave is going to be the decide the level of security which any organization have. Security diligence will be a new exercise which we were not used to it. It is maybe a home diligence, what kind of routers you are using, what kind of devices are you using, what kind of maybe vicinity, neighborhood kind of thing, which we never do. We did it for third party, but this will extend to maybe employees, locations, that has to increase. The BYOD, which is bring your own device 2.0 version, has to come, where the controls have to be maybe we have to give access to no longer you can say only company will provide laptops or mobiles which only can be used. Anything and everything will have to be allowed by most of the organizations. Most of the organizations, more than I think for long period of time, more than 50% will work from home. So all this will have to happen. There are two associated challenges. How do we have compliance and governance in that kind of a structure? Because now people are working outside, people are from home, and how do you make that hygiene in terms of your compliance and governance embedded into the entire framework? It is a new thing which we have. Also, the privacy and regulatory issues also need to be embedded in the hygiene factor when we are talking about the whole cybersecurity hygiene, and might create unknown risk because of the new way of working. In days to come, we don't know that what is going to happen. But I hope if we have adequate diligence, if we have adequate vigilance, and if we train our employees and our vendors and our management adequately, I think most of the unwanted risks can be averted. The problems still will happen, but if we have most of the things in place, I think we'll be able to come out with less number of scars, and we will be hit lesser compared to other organizations. I think that's all from my side. I'm ready to take questions, Gaurav, if we have time for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pawan. This was
Thank
very
you.
interesting.
Sorry for hurrying it up, I think. Thank you.
No. So, and I completely agree to your point that there are only two kind of people or organizations. One is just who are aware of that they are being hacked, and other one you don't know. And as in when we are just putting more emphasis on cyber checks and all those things, we are more and more aware we are getting more and more aware, we are seeing that the number of cases are increasing day by day. It is the same when we actually started putting IT to the our traditional FIR lodging system, and then we saw that number of FIR has gone up. And it's just because the crime was not increasing, the number of cases filed was increasing. So yeah, so coming to the questions, I can see one direct question coming from Mr. Samir. From Mr. Samir Mutankar is asking, can you suggest few ways to avoid security fatigue for security team which cause due to growing number of security devices and threat landscape?
Yes, I think a tough question. I hope I answered yes, but yeah, automation is the way. I think the more we do automation, because yes, human beings are will get fatigued, but machines do not get tired. So I think the more we automate systems and configure it well for our organizations, automated, that's the only way to reduce fatigue, because workload is going to increase. I don't and budgets are not going to increase. So we will not have that kind of luxury to hire more teams, unfortunately, unless things become much better on that. So I think automation is going to be the way ahead on that. And maybe I think I'll pass it on to this question to Albert. I think he's going to suggest some interesting techniques in the next session, which will help in that.
Sure. So one another thing is coming from Mr. Ravi Pratap Chauhan. He's saying that recently number of Facebook accounts hacks has been reported. Could you please share some known reasons and tips to safeguard and application installed in our smartphones, especially for in smartphone perspective? He's asking.
Again, I'm not sure the Facebook hack is happening through our phones or the same. Because what happens, our details and credentials are available at so many places. So whenever we log on to certain site, like when we log on to certain application, we log in through Facebook. So through Google or through LinkedIn kind of thing. So now hack is happening there, and our credentials are getting out from there. So it is not actually our Facebook hack, or a Facebook account is not getting attacked, but because now we have our credential is available, because somebody else, a third party vendor or a third party application got attacked, and through that the accounts are getting hacked on that thing. So again, it boils down to hygiene, that how many places are we putting our credentials, because we have that, we don't want to put our credentials, we don't want to put their password. So easiest way to link to a Google or link to Facebook, that is an easiest way to do for us. And because of that, if it is 15 applications is using our Facebook credential, and they will use only once. Next, every time they use that application, they are not going to ask for your credential. They have that saved in your which is there. So that is where the problem is. It is not about the Facebook kind of, and usually Facebook or big. Usually these companies do not get hacked that easily. And if yeah, again, I'm not saying they cannot be hacked, but they cannot be hacked so easily, because they put lots of controls in place on that.
Yeah, sure. Though it is practically impossible nowadays to get unhacked, but yeah,
Yes.
companies like Google and Facebook, they are using a lot of controls and other measures.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes. Absolutely.
so just before ending, just Pawan, just would like to ask that is there a place or a single document which organizations can refer when it comes to adopting cyber hygiene? Is there a fingertip method, or
Single tip, but yeah, again, it's various things in that. There's no single document per se, but yes, I can share maybe a best practices kind of thing. There are lots of these kind of documents, but yes, I can share one of the documents which says these are 15-20 things which users should do on things to improve the hygiene or cyber hygiene kind of thing.
Agreed. So please, that would be really helpful. Kindly,
Totally.
please share with us. So one last just question. I'm just seeing that Suraj Kumar is asking, do you suggest companies to move to zero trust model?
I don't think so. Companies have option. It has to happen, because why zero trust? Because we are becoming a borderless organization.
Yeah.
because everybody wants to work from home now. Staycations they want to sit in Goa for 2 months and work, kind of thing. So everywhere and anywhere work, the only way out is a zero trust model. That is the only way out. I don't In the current situation, I don't foresee any other ways. So we don't trust anybody unless you otherwise you prove your credential and every time you log into the system. So zero trust is the only way forward.
Agreed. So thank you, Mr. Pawan Desai. Thank you very much
Thank you
for
very much,
sharing
Gaurav.
your time
this.
and expertise with us, and responding to the questions from the asked by the audience. Thank you once again from both on behalf of NIDM and FICCI for being with us as a speaker.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So moving next in the agenda, we have another session coming up on cyber forensics, and I would like to invite Captain Albert Lewis for this, and just briefly would like to introduce him. Captain Albert Lewis is the founder and CEO of Specialist Advisory and Intervention Group, which is in short called SAIG. Is a seasoned risk management professional with over 2 decades of experience. He served in the elite special forces of the Indian Army and an alumnus of the Indian Institute of Management, Lucknow. Captain Lewis actively served in mandated high-risk special operation missions such as direct action, hostage rescue, counter-terrorist, unconventional warfare, foreign internal defense, personal recovery, asymmetric warfare, electronic warfare, counter-proliferation during hostility, etc. Served as a troop commander of a quick reaction team directly under the force commander of the mission of the United Nations mission in Ethiopia and Eritrea. With this brief introduction, I would like to invite Captain Albert Lewis to please deliver his lecture on cyber forensics.
Thank you, Gaurav
Captain
team.
Lewis, yeah.
I'm audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction.
Welcome.
And thank you from Specialist Advisor and Intervention Group for this opportunity, and along with our partners, Pinkerton, who has guided us to this. So cyber forensics has been something that has been in the foray for a very long time. Interestingly, our courts or in Indian legal systems is still I would say, in a nascent stage as much as compared to the Western countries. We are still catching up with it. So I would like to take you through a little bit of the processes. It's a very vast subject, but I would like to take what is happening currently as cyber forensics and what is the future holds with the scenarios that are shaping up in today's world. So just allow me to share my screen for a second.
Yes, we can see your screen, Captain Lewis.
Perfect.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So cyber forensics, sometimes often referred as e-discovery also, that is electronic discovery, is the idea or the process in which we pick up anything that is electronically stored. Now, back in time, it was pretty simple. We had a desktop, and then further on moving on to a laptop, which had to be acquired when a case is happening, when we had to collect the evidence in a very forensic manner. The forensic manner is that a plaintiff, when filing a complaint, when you are acquiring the target device, at no point in the court that you would want to be in a situation where the defendant claims that while during the process of collection, the data has been tampered with. Then it doesn't stand the test of trial and it becomes non-admissible in the court. So in a process where a data is being acquired, we use mechanism through which certain proven mechanisms, standards through which where the target device is collected onto another device, which is, let's say, 1 terabyte of, let's take an example of a desktop, a 1 terabyte of disk being copied onto another disk, which will form as the evidence for us for further analysis through a process where we use mechanisms like write blockers in place. The idea of using write blockers is that every cable or every communication channel has a read and write facility. So during the acquisition process, we completely cut out either through a hardware methodology, that is a hard device, or a software methodology where nothing is written. So when you plug in a device, let's say you take a USB and plug into a computer, there is always a two-way communication that is going to happen. Now, to avoid that, the right part is completely cut off. So you acquire this digital evidence, further ingest it into a forensic software wherein there is no tampering of that data, integrity of the data or the file system at all. So that has moved it, life has moved a lot ahead, that no more we are talking about a laptop or a desktop anymore. It's become even more complicated, moving on to mobile forensics. Most of the evidence today in cases are present in mobile devices. Now, mobile devices present a lot of challenges wherein the OEMs who are manufacturing the mobile devices have also caught up with the idea of hardening their systems. So most of the acquiring softwares are no more in a position to easily acquire the device through a complete bit by bit acquisition. The scenario has even spread further where we just cannot limit our investigations to a target device itself. We have to expand to the social communication. So there is a requirement for social media forensics, wherein we have to acquire public chats and conversations that would have happened through, of course, through a court order. That is also added onto the mix. Now, email forensics is extremely interesting from the fact that today there is a lot of communication. It has almost become like the bottleneck for most of the cases. However, when you acquire an email, there is thousands and thousands of email conversation. Now, one needs to review this conversation. So we have to step into a place where the usage of artificial intelligence technologies like natural language processing, those kind of technologies have to be used, wherein we program the system to look for specific conversations or keywords within the company or the target device's email. Now, it is okay when you have one single target device, but when we're talking about enterprise level forensics, we're talking about email conversations that are under the code scanner of hundreds of people. Now that throws a lot of challenge. Acquisition is one part, but the reviewing part poses a lot of challenge. So that is when today's world, we use a lot more technologies and artificial intelligence to acquire this. Then the other sources that are like network statistics, telemetrics on the network, which also add on to be, I would say, something more of a layer in terms of the evidence that we are collecting. So typically, it starts with the simple process of identifying what the target is. That is the data that we are trying to acquire. Now, I had already mentioned about the collection process. There is a forensically sound and a vetted mechanism that is internationally accepted, which needs to be followed, which is specifically got to do with the right blocking methodology. And then we never use the target hard disk for further analysis. The reason is a device that is acquired might have deleted data. Now, in order to run a recovery of the data, you may have to plug in the target hard disk multiple times, and there's a chance that it may crash, something may happen with it. So we ensure that a bit by bit image, the slack space, everything that is there is copied onto a device which we can continuously use through different softwares and different analysis method, where the target device is, the integrity of it is preserved completely. So there are primarily there are two types of acquisitions in the forensic world, which is almost the physical acquisition, which is the complete acquisition, that is a bit by bit. And then there is a logical acquisition, which is whatever is visible to us in the file structure. So whenever you delete something, it literally does not go anywhere. The only fact is that the pointers towards which shows the system files that the data is stored here, almost like a library index, is taken out. It's almost like you don't have a navigation or a direction path. It is taken out, it's broken. But the OS is the OS is capable of, not capable of identifying where that space is, so it will override that space. But in a physical acquisition wherein you have taken all that slack space, which is a free space, you take every bit and image it directly onto another device, which you use as a evidence image, wherein you can run carving methodology. Carving is basically to undelete the storage, whatever was written there, through certain algorithms, through certain softwares. We are able to reconstruct or retrieve the deleted data. Then the next step of the electronic discovery process on a top level, if you were to speak, is the analysis part. So teams on ground, whenever a case happens, goes and acquires the evidence through a physical on ground, and it is stored and it is kept for, it's preserved, so that when the court order comes in to analyze it, now you need to analyze this data. So typically the case brief is given, and then you search for certain set of keywords are given to you, or the brief of the case is given to you, wherein the analyst runs analysis to take out only what is required. It's like the needle in the haystack. So you need to look for images. You may look for metadata. You may look for certain other aspects that kind of give the lawyers what the right files are, evidences are to prove your case in the court. Whenever you open a system, there are going to be hundreds and thousands of files that are irrelevant. Think of it as a funnel, wherein it is better to have all the data inside rather than outside. It's coming down the funnel, and what the necessary extract is the only thing that is coming out. Gaurav, you're saying something? Okay, so the necessary extract is only coming out. Now, let's take, when you take a couple of devices, when there is a couple of devices in play, you may end up having perhaps 100,000 or 1,000,000 files, which are irrelevant to the case. The job of the analyst is to focus and extract what is relevant to the case using forensic softwares, and just nitty-pick, pluck that file out, and then give it to the legal team or the stakeholders who are looking for those evidences to fight the case. However, let's take a scenario where, let's say, we have acquired a 10 terabyte worth of data from different places. However, when you open it up, when you ingest that data, you are going to be thrown at least a good amount of like 100,000 to 1,000,000 files. It becomes very difficult without a proper methodology or a software to pick out what those files are. So you need to use the forensic softwares to identify the file types, perhaps certain documents which are speaking about the topics of interest to us, and we may reduce that 1,000,000 file to, let's say, 100,000 file. Now, 100,000 file does not serve the purpose. We cannot use that 100,000 files because what is relevant to the case might be far lesser than that. So you further have layers of reviewing mechanism, wherein a first level review happens, wherein a junior level team sits down and looks through those 100,000 files in teams and batches, wherein they would mark those documents which are relevant or evidences that are relevant to us. And they may shrink that size of 100,000 down to, let's say 10,000 documents. Now this gets ready for the legal team to now look into. All the flab is cut. What is more and more relevant stuff is pouring out of the process, and that is picked by the legal team, and then they further mark it as relevant or non-relevant through reviewing softwares wherein collaboratively people can work. So there are multiple reviewing platforms out there in the world. Any organization can use any of them. It doesn't matter. But what matters is the region in which you are fighting this case. Does the court accept those softwares as or is there a precedence that these softwares are allowed by the court, that you've used these softwares and court accepts it? So you need to look into all those aspects and carry out and choose this technology stack that you're going to use for your legal review. So the legal team, the junior legal team, further condenses it and picks up what is the most relevant to the case, and then hands it over to the senior counsel, who would further submit those evidences in the court. So that's the top view of e-discovery or cyber forensics, as we would say, from a top bird's eye view. Now, the same thing, just to give you a pictorial representation, the most important part, like I said, see, the data, initially we had a simple desktop, which was easy to acquire. In the conventional days, we would go into a place where you would go seize the computer, remove it, remove the hard disk, connect it to a write blocker, connect another device where you want to copy that data into, and you could move on to the next one, and so on and so forth. But those days are really, really gone. Write blockers are pretty expensive. From a practical experience, if I had to tell you, write blockers are pretty expensive, and you can only use a write blocking, which is a hardware device, uh, for one device at a time. And depending on the quality of the target drive, whether it's beaten, bruised, and it is not in good shape, when you're trying to do a physical acquisition, which I mentioned, which is a bit by bit copy onto the other side, it may take hours. It may take, if the disk is in good condition, you may end up forensically imaging it completely to, let's say, a 4 or 5 hours, and it could go even to 20, 24 hours, because bit by bit, the system tries to pick it up. Even if there are bad sectors, it takes a lot of time. And time is a very, very critical aspect. Today, in some of the cases that we have worked on, we have to image the entire organizational data. That is upward of 200, 300 devices at a go. And you're given a very short span of time to work on it. The reason, let's say a plaintiff has filed a case and you're going to the target, you've got a court order to acquire the images for further analysis. When you step into their premises, you may have the court order to acquire the devices, but the fact is that you're disrupting their business. So if you are taking your staff out or moving them away from the desktops or the laptops, you have essentially kind of brought the company to a standstill. So faster acquisitions are extremely important if you're looking at multiple devices. Let's say you have an entire floor or an entire department to be imaged, forensically imaged, or the evidence to be collected. It will take a long, long, long time. If you had a few write blockers in hand and you would go around one device, let's say take an example of 100 devices on a floor for a department. No company today in India can provide you 100 write blockers. This is a reality. Write blockers straight away. So how do we come across those challenges? The best way is, today it is possible. Back in the days, it was not an option. It did take time. But one of the things that we quickly learned is that it is always best to use the same device, that is the device that you're going to acquire, and use a live boot mechanism through a pen drive, which is a forensically specifically designed token, which can be plugged in, wherein you use the compute power of the same device, and you could replicate the same simultaneously to 100 devices, rather than the costly proposition of running through sourcing at least 10 or 20 write blockers. Write blockers can cost anything from a lakh onwards to upward also. So you can imagine how cumbersome it becomes, and impossible to source that many write blockers when you're doing an enterprise level acquisition. So the mobile devices per se require entirely different methodology, entirely different technology. And most of the standard acquisition softwares that are available, which are affordable or available, do not completely acquire a mobile device. So if your target has mobile devices, which is the latest iOS or Android, it gets extremely, extremely difficult to the entire bit by bit acquisition. Now, bit by bit is the best bet that you have whenever you do a forensics. Because logical acquisition is what you can visibly see. Things that have been deleted are not in your hands, not at all. So if you are to undelete, if things have been deleted and you want to undelete those or carve that data out, your best bet is physically acquired. Now, those softwares tend to be expensive. And this is one of the reasons primarily companies are very much discouraged to go for a full-fledged e-discovery or cyber forensic process. So a target, you may think that there is one individual who must have created a problem within the organization, which needs to be investigated. But people have become extremely smart that when you really end up acquiring the device, you don't find any evidence, because they would have done it through multiple people within the organization whom you are not aware of. So in cases which the stakes are really, really high, the plaintiff or the courts decide to move on to acquire the entire data set. Social media forensics has become very, very relevant in today's world. Now, social media acquisitions are possible. There are methodologies for it, because today, especially with reputation damage, tweets or any mentions that come out there, it is important to acquire it at the point it was available. If it is not available, then you are looking at a situation where you have to chase and subpoena the service provider and go behind them. But when you have the opportunity, when it pops up, it is always best to acquire those chats or the postings out there immediately and store them so that tomorrow you can use it for evidence, as an evidence. Cloud forensics, again, it's not very different from a physical device forensics. The credentials are very much required, and there are far many tools today available for us to carry out this. Audio forensics starts with a challenge, because audio is firstly, the evidences that we receive as audio are mostly in cases where somebody would have recorded it in an environment with a lot of ambient noise. So when you receive a recording, it tends to be not in the higher bit rate or a higher resolution that can be used to distinctly identify the speaker. So you are always trying to identify that the person who you claim to have spoken is the person that is whose voice is on the file. Because if you're not in a position to prove it completely, then that individual would defend themselves in the court. And if you don't have the strong evidence to prove otherwise, then your case is going to fall flat. So in audio forensics, it takes a little more than the regular aspect, because there's so much of noise. So you start with cleaning the ambient noise to start hearing what those spoken words are, the style in which the way they dictate things, the mannerism in which they speak. All these things sort of have to be fingerprinted and analyzed. Now, in order to match this, you may need to proceed with somehow acquiring a sample voice of the individual in a very cleaner environment with a higher resolution, so you can carry out comparative analysis. So audio forensics is a bit tricky, but as time progresses, there are far more tools out there which allows you to, through a lot of artificial intelligence methodologies, wherein they are able to identify and nitpick those frequencies of the speaker and isolate other voices for a cleaner voice to be identified. So there's a lot of manual intervention as well as a lot of technological intervention. IoT devices follows the same suite of computer and cloud forensics. Now comes the email forensics part. There is a challenge with internal as well as external. Now, as an organization, internally, you're good to go, because you hold the data, it's your official data. And should a problem happens, you would not be interested to sit down and go through those emails one by one. Some of the methodologies that has proven very, very helpful to us in the organization is to acquire the entire data set of the email, ingest them into technologies that can draw out network maps of speakers, the communicators, one to the other, the frequency in which they have spoken. So the natural language processing algorithms can pick up conversations in multiple languages, specifically for companies that are spread across the globe and speaking in different languages. So as an investigation team, it is important that you have the capability to, your investigating team would be, let's say they are English speaking people, but you have emails acquired from Arabic or any other language, Portuguese or multiple languages for that matter. The ability to convert those languages and instantly analyze allows the investigator to cut short a lot of time. The technologies that exist today for email forensics uses this algorithms. When you ingest the data into it, identifies the conversations, the keywords, the sentiments. The sentiments is I would compare sentiments to be a pretty easy part, wherein you are only segregating between a positive conversation, a negative, or a neutral conversation. But furthermore, when the cases are more complex, you may need to understand emotions like anger, frustration. But thankfully, today the technology is far evolved that you can process millions of emails in an organization straight away and identify on a particular each speaker's general net sentiment. Are they abusive? Are they aggressive? Have they spoken about money, transactions? They can instantly do that, instantly. And that's the power of today's forensic capability. Database forensics and network forensics require different methodologies and tools. Now, there is always a reactive methodology. Once something goes in the organization, then you're reactively approaching it. But I've always been a fan of proactive capability being built into the organization. So if you were to sum up this process, the first part is the collection, that is the identifying the ESI, which is the electronically stored information. That could be any electronically stored information. And of course, there are analog information also, analog file types, but generally electronically stored information that includes any of these above spoken and more. The forensic acquisition, which is very important, because if it is not a write block, either through a hardware methodology or a software methodology, the person you are complaining against will defend it in court and would even claim that you have tampered with the evidence. Now, how do you do this entire process? When you acquire itself, there is a mathematical calculation wherein a hash value is generated for a file type, that at the point of acquiring the evidence, the system generates, sums all the data and gives you a hash value, which is a mathematically calculated value. Now, if you move so much as one dot of change in that file, the entire hash value will change. So it is authentication which truly states that the moment I or the analyst or the investigator acquired that evidence, at that point, the software calculated the hash value of that file. And if we are presenting it in court, if the same hash value matches, then it is for certain that the file is not tampered. So that hash value is an extremely important mathematical calculation, which is part of the collection process, where there is a panchnama that is created, wherein the cases, the evidence where you've acquired it, what device, serial number, the hard disk, the target hard disk, the source as well as the target hard disk is mentioned, and who has done it at what time. Everything is mentioned in that, and that never changes. And the hash value is also mentioned. So nobody can claim moving ahead saying that, hey, they have tampered with the data, I'm innocent. So it is extremely important. Now, typically in a scenario, once you collect the evidences, if you're in a court case, the court might ask you to submit the evidence, and it becomes a second part to further litigate and get the court's permission to run an analysis. So collection being one part, that you've secured the data. Let's say it's an IPR violation case, and you've secured the data of the defendants from the defendant's premises. Sometimes court may not give you the permission straight away. So it becomes part two. Now you've collected it. Now you need to analyze it. So then your legal team may be fighting for permission. Then once you get the second stage, you may start the analysis on those acquired data. Now, during this period, it may take some time. So it is extremely important to store these data, these hard disk or the whatever storage devices you've acquired those evidences in very sensitive manner. Sensitive in the sense physically as well as the environment control. It has to be stored in static bags. Things like that has to be very taken care of extremely, because this is what your evidence is. Your case might be a multi-million or a billion-dollar case. You never know. So, and everything is pivoting from this one single hard drive or 100 hard drives which is out there with you, which you've acquired. Should that get damaged, you're not going to get you're not going to easily get a permission to go back into the premises. It's not about getting permission, but by the time you may go to the defendant's premises, they would have already deleted the data. So it is extremely important to handle this evidence with care. So much care to treat it as much as it's your baby. So very sensitive environment is required. No static energy should be around, because these are, end of the day, electronics as well as magnetic disks are subject to very high power radio frequencies. And interestingly, we all live in an environment where it is saturated with RF energy. So we have to be very clear. Static energies can damage, fall, shocks, temperature. These are very, very sensitive. So secure on-premise storage is extremely important. The containers that you hold them should be shock-proof. So those kind of care has to be taken. The other aspect is the physical accessibility. From a physical security standpoint, nobody should have access to the data unless until they are authorized. The reason, you may have acquired a defendant's entire computer for that matter, which interestingly holds the point of contention that you have a case, but also perhaps NDA governed files of other clients. Now you might be trying to fight your case, but you may end up in a litigation where other people would have also filed a case against you. So you have to be very sensitive to these aspects. Even when the analysis happens, your team should be sensitized to the fact that you are only subject to look at the cases, the data that is relevant to the case. The devices will have far more. So privacy issues. So one has to be very, very, very sensitive that we are only looking at documents or evidences that are with respect to our case. So one is the documents that easily tells you about a case. That could be a PDF, that could be an email, that could be a Word, and etc., which are a common man or a woman readable format. But then there is a deeper side to it. That is the forensic, the cyber forensic in true sense. That is the cache files, that is the system logs, which may give you a deeper story, even if you don't find anything very, very evidently visible to you. So it is extremely important these things are kept in mind. Now, once these data are extracted, I had given the example of, let's say, 10 million documents or file systems have come up, files have come into your possession while ingesting the data. You are only looking for perhaps those 100 files that are relevant to your case. And also there is a sensitivity that it's not only documents that are relevant to your case, but there are documents that are relevant to other organizations also, perhaps within that company's data set. So security of this file system is extremely important. So you may have a lab where you store this information, but interestingly, this might be a case which is multinational, and there are stakeholders or people who need to look into the data. Maybe lawyers from your different let's say your Sao Paulo branch or a New York branch or a Paris branch, an Indian branch. They all need to take a look into this. How do you do that? You can't just send or share files. Whatever is collected as that evidence have to go into a reviewing platform which is extremely secure, wherein collaboratively people can discuss those documents, whether they are relevant or how relevant are they. So you use a forensic software to acquire, you use certain processes to store them in a place, you ingest them into a forensic software to nitpick those files that are relevant to you. Even if it is in the binary form, you pick them up, you reconstruct. If this is deleted, you use those forensic softwares to undelete the data. Now you've got the data, but now we need to know what is relevant out of this data. So you load them onto reviewing platforms, wherein user logins are provided to reviewers across the globe could collaboratively work together and then mark those documents which are relevant. So it could go as reviewing level 1, where maybe you may have a junior team which says, cut the flab, take out the rubbish, focus on what is relevant. So a 10,000 document, 100,000 document may come down to a 10,000 document. A 10,000 may shrink down to a next level, higher level of reviewer. They would say, no, these are not relevant, throw them out. This is relevant, it may shrink to 1,000. And by the time that you really decide on these are the most critical data that is available on the data set, which can be used for the case, then that would be finally used. So from 100,000, you may end up using this 100 odd documents, which is very, very, very critical to prove your case. Now that's where you present this data to the court. That is providing and working collaboratively with the law firms that are working on the case, where you as a technical expert would work with a legal firm, match the strategy. It's very important to match the strategy of the case. The other aspect that I wish to bring forward is the early case assessment methodology, as well as the mentality that one needs to. Litigation is an expensive proposition. One may think that you have, when you enter the case, you may think that, okay, doing this activity will give you, will certainly make you win the case. But it is important that you understand, once you acquire this data, what really you have. Now, what you really have can only be seen if you go through all that 100,000 documents, right? So today's technology allows you to kind of strategize, do a fast, quick search and peek to create a clearer understanding what is that you're holding with you in hand. Because all cases are fought if you can forge your thought process faster than the adversary. So if you don't have an in-depth understanding about the strengths that you have, then you are in trouble. So early case assessment ideology should be always borne in mind, wherein you are looking at the evidences and then you're reshaping, re-strategizing your case accordingly. Maybe that one golden or a silver bullet that you're looking for was not available, but maybe something else comes up. So you have to figure out how you're going to fight this in the court. So one needs to closely work with the legal team to achieve this. That is the litigation support. And you may have to come to the court and as an expert witness, through the honorable court, and educate on what you have found and the methodologies you found and why you think it is a relevant data. So in the forensic process, the expert witness is also part of sort of the culmination to that activity. Now, I would like to take you through a real life case scenario to give you a sneak peek into the complexity of a full-fledged transnational e-discovery process looks like, and what kind of coordinations and what kind of effort that it takes. Because the moment your defendant understands that their wrongdoing has been picked up, they will end up deleting the data or finding methods to remove those evidences from the premises. So this particular case study which I'm talking about is one of the client where one of the very leading companies in the world, where their next competitor was at an industrial level, at an enterprise level, was simply taking their data straight away and using it as theirs to run their business straight away. And one of the key aspects of their business was high resolution pictures, which they have taken effort, a real estate company, which they have taken a lot of effort to send across the country and the world, wherein they send their people, click those pictures, put it up on their portal with a lot of information about that property. Now, the competitor was easily taking that information out, as well as the high resolution pictures, and using it to boost their business. Now, this is a very, very big company running a multi-billion-dollar business. So when they started in the initial days, they started finding that they were finding unusual sort of traffic from India and Philippines, US also, but mostly in India and Philippines. Now, this is a little back in time where most of the technologies were not so evolved also. It was in the infant stages. most of the artificial intelligence technologies were just at a very, very nascent stage and experimental. And not many people would have done forensics at a level where you are acquiring more than 10 or 20 terabyte or 30 terabyte data. Beyond that, even the existing softwares would just crash, they would hang. So this is a very complex and very interesting case. So when this information started pouring in, not only just physical as well as digital form, the client was very concerned about this sort of mechanism that is happening. So they wanted us to investigate into it. So before we reach the forensic part, as risk advisors and investigators, as an organization which does that, it was very important to start laying the bedrocks to move to court, because no court is going to just entertain you if you don't have enough evidence to prove that such a wrongdoing is happening towards your company. So we had to gather through technological methodologies as well as physical methodologies, the good old human intelligence methodologies, and carry out surveillance and intelligence gathering to understand whether the thing that we think that the wrongdoing is happening is actually happening on ground. Now we are talking transnational coordinated intelligence gathering on ground as well as electronically. So multiple tools were deployed to identify these traffics and what sort of files are being pulled out. And how they did is they used certain B2B clients who had access authorizations to use these files for their clients, and they use those credentials and stuff to acquire this information. They would log in and they would at an industrial level pull out the data, put entire stack of people sitting down and working on softwares like Photoshop and all to remove those holograms of our plaintiff, and then put theirs and change so many things, and then they would put it up at the back end. So at Philippines and India, at an industrial level, people were sitting and doing this process, and the competitor who had commissioned them were given back-end access to their databases to upload these pictures. So the competitor would provide them with credentials through sources in US, and then they would provide it to these back-end people in Philippines and India at an industrial level, because the laws were still not so robust. Not that it is very robust today. There is so much of loopholes one can use. So they kind of chose these two places, and they would edit these information and load it into their backend, and in their front end it would pop up as if they took those images, and as if their consultants and analysts and researchers found the details about those buildings, and loaded it onto their system, and they were working like that. So this took some time to gather specific intelligence which is submittable in court. So that was secured from a physical as well as a digital aspect. A lot of groundwork over there, submitted to the courts. Now, when you say submitted to the courts, this is 3 different countries we are speaking about. So there is a immense coordination between the law firms that are working in 3 different countries. 3 different countries with different dynamics. Each country has its own nuances that you have to deal with. And it cannot be that you secured a court order in one place and you carried out a raid in one single destiny, and the others won't delete the data. So it is paramount that the coordination has to be so precise that the raid also had to happen simultaneously at the same time. So there was an immense amount of coordination that went, and the team was amazing. And then the forensic raid happened almost near simultaneously. That allowed to maintain the surprise. Now, going there, specifically, we're talking about 350 plus devices already on ground and a lot of archive devices. A conventional method of write blocker, which we all are so familiar with, wouldn't have sufficed in this case. So you had to innovate. So we went on to create US DoD, Department of Defense standard acquisition protocols for the computers. And then we used those disks, that is the pen drives, and moved on to use the same devices that we're using to acquire the data. So we just moved in these DoD standard tested devices were plugged in, and we didn't have to dismantle the computers. We could just go and plug in hundreds of those pen drives and then live boot from there using this protocol, and then had to connect the external hard drive, and we could acquire this much amount of information under 5 days, which is very, very difficult. Now, I have to be honest with you, it was not an easy task, because we even took our administrative team so that the team fatigues were taken care of, security team and network teams, we had to set up our own networks. It was a tremendously challenging environment. We hadn't slept at all. We were literally there. But this had to be done, It's as simple as that, because it is just a matter of time that your defendant will also secure ways from the court to disrupt or push you out of that place. So you had to have that a small window which had to be utilized to get out of there. Now, this evidence was transported to the court and submitted to the court, and then post that, again, there were other submissions to the court, start the investigation. But once that investigation started, we are talking about compressed data of almost 500 odd terabytes of data. Now, when you unzip them, when you collect them, when you unzip them, we had the biggest challenge that came up was it just exploded into 5.12 roughly billion documents. Now, this is a real problem. The time is extremely small because we have to get back with evidence to the court. Then we had to move on to methodologies where we had to heavily rely on artificial intelligence and natural language processing methodologies to cull out whatever was irrelevant and bring out what is needed. So around 36 million documents had popped out, the junk was thrown out, and we came out with 36 million documents. But that still was a humongous challenge. We had to deploy an army to legally review them. So furthermore, the NLP models which we had deployed allowed us to swiftly come to pick out the most relevant documents and submit to the legal team, which then could further proceed in the 3 countries, moving on to win an estimated around 500 million in compensation for the copyrighted photographs which were stolen. So it is a complex matter. People mostly get discouraged to even involve. Companies get involved, do not even like to get into that. But here you can clearly see the objective is the stakes were very, very high. So such a high level activity has to be done. Now, there was another challenge which came up. Typically, people look at cloud compute as when more and more data comes in your hand, most of the forensic organizations, they would jump onto a cloud. Sometimes the court do not agree to the fact that you're putting those evidences on the cloud, but you need compute power. Forensics is not easy. You need extreme high computing power to process that kind of data. So we had to create an internal data center itself, because should that data get compromised in the cloud, then you are looking at lawsuits from 50 other of their clients, the defendant's clients, for NDA government governed documents leaking into the through a compromise in security, anything of that sort. So it is something that one could never ever take a chance. We had to build data center, high performance compute, to run it through a process, a very, very, very solid process to bring a culmination to this. I am not a fan of, frankly, I'm not a fan of what we spoke at the earlier time. The world has changed completely. We end up typically in a e-discovery of forensics when we are caught napping. I often recommend everybody who's in this field that the days where things have happened and gone, you find one culprit and you perhaps remove that threat from your company. Those days are gone. Today, things are moving so fast that a reactive, you caught me napping, would not help you. And the threat matrix has spread outside just a device, from a desktop or a laptop or an iPhone of an individual, to a very, very organized mechanism where organizations are being targeted by competitors, other, I would say, elements of all kinds. I don't want to take names, but elements of all kinds. There is a concentrated effort to attack organizations and disrupt organizations. Today, the hackers are even putting out so publicly that they would give 60% of the profit in a ransomware attack if any of the employees internally can deploy the payload. Things have changed now. You cannot protect your organization in the bygone era of ways of once you come to know we will deal with it methodology. No. So what we do here is that we bring in all possible forms. You're guarding a wall, you're sitting there. When the threat comes and shows up at your doorstep, then you deal with it. We're talking something different. We're talking about we should move ahead, further ahead, not only through just technologies that defend your firewalls and technologies that just scan your internal systems or through processes. You want to know out there if there is a threat that is popped up anywhere in the world. And what is that threat doing? If an organization, the first information about an organization getting compromised or an incident that is happening. So depending on your business interest, you will shape the way you search for information. So here, what we help our clients with, or what we propose to do with our clients and how we've been doing things, is that we bring in all the information from external, all the social media, the entire search engine, your clear net, which is clearly visible for you and which is searchable, indexable, looking out for threats out there, proactively out there, building that pipeline into the system, which is a knowledge arc system. Then using the company's internal databases, which are very, very critical, which can have your regular communications as well as network data, whatever is relevant to run your business and critical to your business, coming in together, getting a little more perspective beyond that. Most of the operatives who are in the clear net have now become sophisticated and are moving down into the deep and dark web. So compromises happening there, organizations that are operating their new malwares and payloads that are being released, which may hamper your organization, proactively being in those chat rooms and stuff and collecting that information. So going deeper down into understanding breaches and leak, company data leakages, all these things put together, a malware package which is seen somewhere. You want to see if organizations which you suspect, are there other organizations which have the similar signature? What is the traffic or the path where that malware payload has moved? So you can predict things. Competitors, organizations that are against you or against the nation, is a national security issue today. So bringing in all those telemetric data along with this data and deeper down into the deep web, we combine this information so that we are proactively hunting threats rather than reactively doing an investigation on the forensics to identify what happened to us. So this poses a challenge where you have a tremendous amount of data, and this ushers the new world of AI and data science, bringing in a lot of possibilities within your organization. Today, it is so much more easier than yesterday. In the earlier days, we had to write scripts, a lot of scripts to change. Today, the solutions are so readily available. It is up to the creativity of companies and organizations and individuals who have to protect information to creatively work with partners and bringing those data sets together and categorize them, label them, bring them in, carry out analysis, let the AI do that stuff for you. Bring your learnings and wisdom, program the system AI, allow the AI to do the manual job that you would have taken time for. Let the creativity prevail. So using a lot of...
Captain Luis, I would request if you could conclude maybe shortly.
This is the last slide and we are done with this. So we are looking at a proactive approach of organizations from a reactive cyber forensics to a futuristic. I don't say it's futuristic. It is something that we should have done yesterday. So taking that step is the way forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Captain Luis. That was a really insightful and lot of details and a lot of very deep into technology kind of a presentation, and very interesting to see that a lot of this was a very the sample study which you shared in IP case. That was really interesting to see how but it took a lot of time. I hope that I'm pretty much sure that it has taken a lot of time and energy of your team. So we have a few questions from the audience. One question is coming from Ms. Payal Jain. She's asking that does it mean that data kept in cloud are more risky and hence advisable to have own database management system for that?
So see, here is the thing. We have to be more realistic. Today, to have storages of that size for an organization is impossible. So when I say on-prem. I'm talking about a sealed island wherein you have no physical connect to the outside world. Ultra critical data in cases has to be put that way. But as an organization, I do not even recommend that people should move away from cloud, because we have to be very, very realistic. But what is important is how you segregate the data within the organization, who should have access to that data. So even if, let's say, you take a Microsoft Office 365, you could just work on a very basic package of providing a Microsoft 365, or allowing your administrators to configure it in such a manner that the specific data that is of concern to you remains more and more robust and protected. So I never recommend people to go off the cloud. That's impractical.
Thank you. Another question is that so if we run managed SOC services on cloud, any clause we need to consider in the contract in view of the forensic requirement if it comes up?
So it depends. Today, most of the service providers are looking at e-discovery ready packages. When on a cloud, most of the enterprise solution providers are crystal clear that they give you the packages, but it doesn't come by default. When you engage with them, you will have the chance that one of those packages are ready for you to be used. So your teams should look at the finer details, or even demand for those things to be augmented within your service package. And it's not necessarily the cloud service provider has to have the software or the technology for it. You can have other technologies clubbed together to add that layer of protection to you.
Thank you. Thank you for that explanation. And I don't see any further question right now in the question box. So, so with this, I would like to thank you very much for both from NIDM and FICCI, on behalf of FICCI and NIDM. Thank you for sharing your time and expertise with us. And we will definitely will call you some next time. You know, we are pretty impressed with that kind of a detailed presentation you made today.
Thank you so much from our team, Specialist Advisory Intervention Group. Thank you so much from our partner, Sprinkerton. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Thank
All
you,
of you.
Captain Lee. Same to you. Thank you. So, participants, with this, we come to the final lecture of the day. Now, we have a lecture on cyber threat emerging from remote working and working from home scenario. And we have with us Dr. Karnika Seth, who is a well-known cyber law expert. So, I would just like to briefly introduce Dr. Karnika Seth. Dr. Karnika Seth is an internationally renowned cyber law, IP, and media law expert practicing in the Supreme Court of India. Her contribution to growth and development of cyber laws in India and internationally is widely acknowledged in the corporate world. She has been impaneled as a member of the working group at ICNN, formed to design the policy framework impacting global domain registration services, and has been on expert panel of UNICEF working on online safety. Dr. Seth has conferred the National Gaurav Award in 2017 for exemplary contribution to cyber laws. She received the Digital Empowerment Award in 2015 and the Law Day Award from the Chief Justice of India for her book, Protection on Children on Internet. She also received the Law Day Award in 2012 for her book, Computers, Internet, and New Technology Laws. So with this, I would like to now once again welcome Dr. Karnika Seth. Dr. Seth, over to you.
Thank you so much. I think it's always been a pleasure to speak at FICCI events, and this online training with NIDM on cyber threats is something that is a very pertinent issue. And we, during the pandemic and, even before, we've seen the rising trends in cybercrime. And that's a fact that, we are expecting almost a USD 6 trillion global economy loss due to cyber crimes in 2021. So very apt topic indeed. And I'm delighted to be here once again to take up this issue. I'd like to share a PPT. I'll just try and see if we can just use that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Monu, please, if you could, yeah.
Are you able to see the screen?
Yes.
Great. So the discussion today, in this online training program, I've seen different topics being covered, and my focus today is going to be mainly on what are the cyber threats we have faced in this country and otherwise globally. in the WFH times, and what are the best practices, what we can, basically utilize to safeguard our data, our people, and our processes, and our organizations. This pandemic, though we see ups and downs right now, even we don't know how long the final normalcy will, ultimately culminate in our usual work environments, because we still find people working from home, and online is the new way of business. So therefore, more and more digitization, more and more online communications, and threat to data. So that's what we are going to be talking about today. The rise in cybercrime, as I said, it has been huge, and 86% was the reported, last year also it was reported by the Home Ministry in India, that the cybercrime rose, and the kind of crimes which were percolating in cyberspace constituted not only just use of malware or ransomware, but fake sites. A lot of fake and phishing sites and links were floating on the net, and that played havoc, because people's anxieties were very high, and you would have seen that lots of people were also willing to donate monies, to safeguard different people, provide them medical aid and other resources. And those were people were also duped, because those links and those sites and those accounts which they were sharing online were actually fake. So that's a fact that the law enforcement teams had a tough time curtailing and basically blocking these phishing links from the net. If you would have seen the phishing scams, the modus operandi of the criminals was not just only limited to using fake websites, basically links on social media, but also we would have seen a lot of phishing attacks, that is using of voice over IP. So a lot of voice over IP was used to call people or to SMS people, known as smishing, and that was being utilized by them as a tool or as a method to commit frauds. Fake mobile recharge scams, Netflix subscriptions, or even other kind of frauds percolated around this time. If you would have seen the NCRB data, the crime has doubled every year, every single year. And today's statistics, current statistics, if you see, one cybercrime attack is expected to actually take place every 11 seconds. Every 11 seconds is the today's statistics. So if you see that's huge. That's something that is calls for action, and that is the reason why we not only need to protect our companies, our data and manpower, but entire ecosystem needs a lot of checkpoints, and technology today, thankfully we have progressed a lot in terms of AI, data science, and I've seen the presentation which is just happening before I started off. There is a lot which we have done in the country in terms of technology, and we are utilizing those tools and softwares to actually protect our systems and data, and that is the need of the hour. So needless to say, this slide will basically project what are the kinds of problems or threats, as we say, cyber threats, which we are facing. So we day-to-day, basis, we handle these cyber crimes, and from ransomware to malware attacks to QR code scams, fake news, then phishing, identity theft, cheating and money loss, scams, snooping, interceptions, and then I would say not this picture is not total picture. There's lots of threats to women and children during this time as well, and lots of cyberbullying in the online space. Women being target of a lot of harassment, and businesses' data has been basically stolen around this time. So that is the reason that we see a lot of man-in-the-middle attacks, and ransomware was the highest attacks which have been caused. Right from units like reported, news from Haldiram to any other, I would say, entity, you name it, and there have been ransomware attacks, and there have been, latest attacks which we've seen as the Pegasus incident. There's a lot happening in this ecosystem at this point. So if we see during COVID time specifically, fake donation sites, phishing scams, as I said, malware attacks, and snooping through video conference apps, and fake news. These have been the main highlights. And by far, I think the rising trend has been more of ransomware, and the different kinds of ransomware also. Some encrypt the entire data out, and some encrypt only the specific data, which is sensitive data. Some would encrypt the entire disk out, and the decryption may not be possible without having the password. So blackmail, sabotage, disruption of businesses has been the order of the day. Now, if we see fake donation sites, there have been many, and people were not aware initially where to we donate. So WHO had this particular site, the link which was on the WHO, Ministry of Health in India. Also, official website handles, they were to be, visited, and that kind of awareness was being then spread, after some scams were reported. And PM Relief Fund itself, there was a scam of the same, and the account of, if you see PM Cares Relief Fund, there were fake UPI handles which were found, and then they were blocked, from access. So Delhi police registered a complaint, and that was investigated. So therefore, the problems which occurred were basically because of lack of awareness among people also, and the frantic clicking of links just to get access to some information and the latest statistics of what is the current score of patients of COVID and other things, and therefore the need for the government app. So Arogya Setu app was launched during this time. Advisories were given by the Delhi police, and lots of fake astrologers, lots of fake therapists floating on the online. So there was a lot of need for awareness, and that's why many phishing sites were blocked by the ministry, and many white papers were produced by the certain, and the government authorities warned people, right from WHO to I would say Indian authorities. There were a clear dissemination of what are those fake links, and they have been blocked, and basically best practices given to people to actually stop using these phishing links and circulating them without checking. So this particular site, this Ministry of Health, had various resources, and those were reliable. So therefore, it was increasingly spread in the media that you need to visit these to get the right information, because there was a lot of fake information. And even Supreme Court of India was very concerned over the fake news during COVID. So there were clear directives given by the court to actually curb fake news and go for only reliable information. Now this brings me to letting you know that basically there's also technical tools. There are lots of them available to detect fake news. Apart from encouraging people to look at only official handles of news channels or papers, there are various softwares and various, factcheck.org, Boom, MetaFact, which allow you to actually check the fake news from real. And morphed pictures, you can detect morphed pictures, you can detect whether these are doctored or these are deep fakes or not. And that is possible. There are other tools, Google reverse image search and Hoaxlayer, that is another service which we saw. And the newspaper handles, they themselves have fact-checking sites. So that has been a boon to actually curb fake news in India. Then there were some new launches, like Truth Share was a new technology to actually find out whether there is any particular news which is fake or not from genuine. And these models, very, very, I think they're very sophisticated, and one is able to find out, whether this particular tampering has occurred in this particular piece of news or not, whether it's video, audio, or it's textual. Then Certain also issued various advisories from time to time, and from the Zoom to other protocols and security aspects. certain did their own share of advisories, and there were many of them available. And once you go through the vulnerabilities they advised on various Google Android or otherwise, Apple Mac also, they had certain vulnerabilities pointed out to people, and various advisories on online safety were given during this time, both for mobile devices and other applications. And after that, if you see the secure usage of Zoom, as I mentioned, was also 30th March advisory, and later on there were updates in the Zoom, and that worked well. Thereafter, there have been organizations in India like the DSCI, which have given various white papers and mandates during this time also, COVID-19 advisories, which were helpful. And social media giants themselves had various measures, like the forwarding of this links by WhatsApp was curtailed to 5 forwards. So they have their own due diligence mechanisms installed, and various campaigns took place during this time. So given this landscape, what happened during the last 2 years in India and abroad during pandemic? The threats have been there. There have been resilient measures to, catch up with and actually safeguard yourselves and organizations from these threats. Various stakeholders have done their share. But when it comes to best practices, if I have to cull out all the best practices, what one needs to do, then for your businesses, these are certain tips which have been there in the number of presentations which we've delivered last 2 years. I think more than 50 presentations on the same topic have been delivered by us. And if I just cull out those important aspects, then these are the few of them. Like using a robust Wi-Fi, because many of them did not even use WPA 2 or 3. Turning the Wi-Fi off when not in use, Bluetooth as well, keeping the OS application software up to date, because a lot of times people don't patch up, and see the updates. Then deploying the right antiviruses, anti-spywares, and whenever one click or forward a content, if one is not watchful, obviously that could be a phishing link and land you in trouble. And then reading the terms of service. Many organizations encourage use of good practices, and we have during this time done the WFHS policy also, social media policy, internet use policy for organizations, and especially the work from home policies, because there was a need. A lot of the in organizations, people were actually using their own home devices to use for work purposes, which was causing problem in terms of data, and in terms of the protocols of communication and other work related, I would say, rules and violation of the same. So therefore there was a need for having the right gadgets, what one can use, the right allocation of software, and the protocols to be followed. So the WFH policy became a very, very paramount document for any organization. Then digital signatures, giving out digital signatures, using the digital signatures, having two-factor authentications, OTP mechanisms, and payment to be only made on HTTPS sites, registering for bank alerts, not falling prey to QR code scams, and not falling prey to smishing and phishing calls were some of the key highlights of best practices which one has shared during this time. If we also look at the use of tools, then the highest I would say adoption was there of VPNs, virtual private networks, which allow you to actually conceal your real IPs and safeguard your systems and basically data from any kind of attacks. So you would use a VPN. A DLP would help preventing a data loss, so that the data is not siphoned off elsewhere by an attacker, or otherwise. Even the employees have been diligent to understand the relevance of the same and importance of data loss prevention software. Most of the internet use policies also highlighted that the organizations are using this DLP to check what data the employees are forwarding, and they're not allowed to forward official data onto any of their personal email accounts specifically. So we've dealt with a lot of cases where a lot of employees don't, say follow this particular mandate and transfer the same to their personal email IDs, and that lands them in a problem, because if that contains some sensitive information or confidential information of any organization, the organization has a right to actually conduct surveillance and take the gadgets for screening, and then take any legal action or recourse. So it's always better to have the internet use policy very clearly laid down and signed by the employees, and so that they understand the nuances and what fallouts can be there of any kind of breaches, intentional or otherwise. So that's something which was very, very important. And then crisis management incident response plans were to be, basically made, especially by the remote workforce. So the people who are working from home specifically, how do they manage any incident? What is the protocol? Who to report to? How do we safeguard the electronic evidence? What are the requirements? Because in the practice, in legal practice, we use the electronic evidence to pursue any case. So if it's a cybercrime case, those electronic evidences are collected and preserved in the best possible manner, like you've seen in the cyber forensics lecture, that there was a right blocker used, because we don't want any kind of tampering of the electronic evidence, and that is usually filed along with section 65B Evidence Act certificate by the CTO, the Chief Technology Officer of the company, to say that this incident has occurred, and this is the printout from the original device that has had this particular evidence on it. And during the time when this incident happened, this system was working fine and properly. So there are certain prerequisites under that section 65B of the Evidence Act which are required to be produced, and it's therefore important to give the right guidance to the employees on crisis management and incident response plans, so that they don't themselves unintentionally or inadvertently tamper the data or the screenshots which are relevant to pursue any legal action. Then comes your periodic audits of system and security and data. Definitely, those are very essential. And then regular backups of data, and then emergency incident response. So these are some key best practices for resilience in this WFH times, which have proven very helpful, specifically if you have a regular backup of data. So even if there's a ransomware attack, the backup has been helpful in at least safeguarding the business so that it's not disrupted completely. So it's always advisable to do that, and a lot of companies have encouraged use of passwords, pattern managers, and built-in encryption mechanisms which are there in the devices. They have been encouraged to be used, and awareness and training is something that goes without saying is very important, and that is the reason why there was so quick an adoption, because the awareness training was the something which was imperative and was being given by people. The organizations wanted to safeguard and train their workforces, and during this security awareness trainings, all these best practices were understood and utilized, and plan of action was made by them to plug in all the loopholes. So how the VPN would work, for instance, this slide shows the same, and during those security awareness trainings, all these are very well explained. How at various levels, from endpoint to generally at a server level or otherwise, attacks could happen, and how one can plug those attacks. How the VPN works is something which is very clear from this example. And the user device and the VPN client interact together, and then there would be a connection after encryption with this service provider, and further you go onto the internet. So your original identity gets concealed, and that is just a safeguard which is very useful, and it helps in basically curtailing any kind of or preventing any kind of cybercrime attacks. The DLP, on the other hand, is something which will protect the data the data from any kind of, for example, any emails which are going through. Any alerts will be sent if there's any email which is not, something which is not authorized data to be sent out to somebody. There would be an alert sent, and then the teams who are, vigilant teams who are actually working on it will take the necessary action, based on the flags which are given on the same. Then if we see the storage, endpoint, and network, these are three key tanks that go into the management of the DLP software. This basically shows if there's a endpoint security threat. There are good softwares, many of them like Symantec, we have Cafe also, and there are network security checks also in the DLP. So in the network, if the data is being lost by any means, or during storage, if there is any kind of a leakage or any kind of threat, so that is pointed out. So it's at 3 levels. And that is the useful part, because it's not just at one level, but one can actually look at it from all the 3 levels and prevent loss of any kind of data, which is crucial to any company. Now, the adoption of cloud is something that goes without saying. It's part and parcel of our businesses today. Whether it's private or public or hybrid, you may choose any, but various security levels are important. Again, network security, workload security, or I would say file storage security. So at various levels, you would have seen, excuse me, that the cloud is something that people would rely on, and this is something that is now the order of the day. So, sorry. I would straight away, stress on this part that in the cloud, people preferring private cloud to public cloud. The reason is obviously security parameters, because when it comes to private cloud, you have a complete control. You have a complete control on what is the parameters you'd like to put in place. Whereas if you're sharing it with so different resources, like if there is SaaS, software as a service, or if you're using resources for multiple organizations, there could be a security threat. However, a lot of organizations also have chosen hybrid cloud models because they're costly to have a private cloud for all the cases. Therefore, I think it's a choice the organization really needs to make, whether it would like to go for private or public or hybrid cloud. But it also depends on the data and the kind of sensitivity which is involved and the processes. It is ultimately a choice which one needs to make in terms of security, in terms of applications, in terms of storage and network security, how they would be comfortable in using a particular service, private or public or hybrid. So that's really dependent on the nature of data, the processes, and the comfort levels of the protocols that they sign with the service provider as well. Now, this brings me to the 16 steps, because when we see the 16 steps to see the IT secure or not, this slide particularly I find very useful, because it basically captures in a one screenshot where are the various threats, and how we need to transgress, or rather travel through in terms of cyber safety and security in this domain, because it's not just one or two checkpoints or 3 checkpoints. There are several checkpoints in terms of cyber security one needs to match up in order to feel confident that this is now foolproof security, although there's no 100% guarantee. Even the best of organizations with best of technology, manpower, training, and resources are not able to sometimes avert attacks. So if we see this particular slide, we have the web hosting domain name management angle, then we have email security systems, then also use of multi-factor authentication. email security filtering encryption mechanisms, then your Office or OS that you use, then your gateway security, any kind of firewalls you'd like to put, malware protection mechanisms, and then other local security mechanisms, user access controls, and endpoint security mechanisms, antiviruses, anti-spywares, advanced threat analytics, any kind of monitoring, audits to see if there are any attacks which are possible. Just do a sort of end-to-end encryption of data and devices, use of these kind of technologies, and then mobile device and management remote by internal IT networks, security policies and practices so that the policy documentation is in order, then user training, and again, vulnerability scanning and testing. And in the end, we know that the whole world is changing in terms of privacy protection and other right mechanisms. Right to be forgotten is now a new right. So a lot of things we have seen in terms of GDPR compliance in the Europe, and also Indian businesses get affected because a lot of Indian businesses cater to European clients and they ought to abide by GDPR guidelines. So we also see a lot of work on this front, and we have managed a lot of GDPR compliance documents wherein we have to see whether the agreement which is being entered into with a back office operator, for example, in India, who processes data of Europeans, needs to be GDPR compliant, whether those practices are put in place, whether the technology is foolproof in that order, and backup and disaster recovery are some of the other aspects. But whether all the requirements of network security and GDPR are in order or not becomes a crucial question at that point. So having said that, there are about almost 16 checkpoints given in this, but they are definitely more than what is encapsulated here, because there are phishing attacks and there are a lot of ransomware attacks, and most of them happen to be not because the technology was not in place. Most of them happen because there were social engineering attacks, and criminals know how to manipulate through social use of social media, or through use of any interesting video or a link sent to somebody, how to manipulate and ask the sensitive information, whether it's financial data or other data, from individuals or organizations, and then they commit frauds. That's how it is. And no matter how much technology we may infuse in our systems and processes and our documentation is in order, the human part of training is very crucial. And that's something that needs, I think, if not more, equal attention than just deploying the gadgets and technology and resources to safeguard our organizations. So during WFH, we see a lot of this trend. Companies have geared up to, I would say, overall their systems, not only compliance measures in terms of policies, in terms of manpower training and deployment of technology. All three are very important. So we have various resources on our website. You can go through the same, and there are apps also available on the various app stores. And you can see many other resources, on the DSCI or the MIT site, and there have been also various advisories by CERT, as I mentioned. Apart from that, it's also important to see the IT Act. I think I didn't specifically mention this, it will be too legal jargon, but I think it's important to highlight this slide, because a lot of these hacking attempts go under Section 66 of the IT Act. And this punishment is about 3 years of any kind of attacks, unauthorized interception of any data, unauthorizedly downloading any data, and identity theft is again 66C of the IT Act. Then the cheating by personation, again 3 years of punishment and fine. 66F is by far largest, because any kind of cyber terrorist attack especially has a punishment of up to life imprisonment and fine. And then we have, IPC provisions like cheating and various other sections which may apply, from time to time, but in most ransomware and other attack cases, the main section used is Section 66 or Edwards 43 of the IT Act. And there one needs to prove the hacking has taken place. So we normally use cyber forensics techniques to actually cull out the relevant data, produce it as electronic evidence along with the case action. Criminal action is filed, and if it is a defamatory matter, defamation involved or data loss is also there. One can also move before the adjudicating officer of the, I would say, 46 section of the IT Act allows you to claim compensation if the data has not been kept, secure, maybe by a body corporate who is collecting your data, a service provider who has not managed to keep the data safe, like the credit card details. Latest mandate by the RBI that the credit card details should not be there on the servers of these companies is important because ultimately all these attacks take away this financial information cost loss to people, and when the loss is caused to people, they are unable to sometimes prove that this has happened because of the security lapses on the part of the service providers to safeguard their information. And that onus, that is huge burden, because any complainant cannot prove the same. That becomes a challenge, but nevertheless they have, now RBI has also made clear directives that if something like this happens where the fault is not on the part of the consumer, then he can sue. For example, if it's a bank where unauthorized debits have taken place in a customer's account, he can sue the bank for any kind of breach of reasonable security practices it ought to have kept. So that is one interesting part. And apart from that, there is a zero trust infrastructure, which is built by now organizations, and it's becoming stricter. The norms are becoming stricter of what kind of security parameters have to be kept by organizations to safeguard, people's data if they're collecting people's data. So for this, these provisions become important. And in many cases, blocking is possible if there is any kind of data which is IP sensitive and it has been leaked online, for instance, a database of customers or otherwise. These are all copyright protected. They're all sensitive information. One can claim injunction from the court to actually stop this data from being, on the net, and blocking orders can be passed, or injunction orders can be passed. And the trend is now also to protect privacy of people. So the Justice K.S. Puttaswamy case, 9-judge bench of the Supreme Court has very clearly held that data privacy is important and fundamental right of people, and therefore they have to be protected in terms of whatever is their confidential private data, and explicit consent needs to be taken from them in order to take any kind of such data which is sensitive. So it becomes important to preserve screenshots of evidence whenever there are any kind of cyber crimes which take place, reporting it to bank immediately if it's a financial fraud, blocking the relevant credit cards or debit cards. And if a bank server is hacked, as I said, then there is zero liability for the customer. Or at least when he reports the fraud on immediate basis, then he's protected. Registering the police complaint, normally cybercrime.gov.in is the site where one can register online complaints, and that's possible even in the WFH environment. There have been many cases reported during this time, and emergency helplines are also there. So now, given this spectrum of how cybercrimes have percolated in this time, and what other kinds of threats we have seen, and real life cases, if you ask me, there have been many. Specifically, man-in-the-middle attacks, where export and import, there was one case where there was an export and import organization. There was a man-in-the-middle attack where somebody hacked into their systems, was somebody an ex-employee, and that created fake IDs of people who were managing the accounts of these two divisions, and the monies was siphoned away because the fake bank account details were supplanted in the invoice which was being circulated using fake email IDs. So that's a very common scenario. and lots of QR code scams where the QR code would say that a person would say, okay, accept say 25,000 rupees from an X person, and the person would think that he would be paid the same, whereas there would be a debit of the same. So a lot of the QR code scams also happened, and data thefts. Definitely, a lot of data thefts due to phishing attacks happened in this time frame. So, having said that, I think we are almost on the verge of the final timings, but I would like to take up any questions rather at this point, if possible. But I think if there are any active questions on the chat window, maybe we can take those. In the meantime, I just want to wind up this by showing you the cybercrime.gov.in portal. You can actually look at this portal. It allows you to register complaints by the click of a mouse. You can just register whatever complaints they may be. And security by design is what is the order of the day. I feel that we used to talk about privacy by design initially, but now I think the time has come where we should be actually talking about, uh, this is security by design. Right now, we just cannot afford security, overlooking security anymore. And that's something which is crucial for all of us. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Karnika Seth, for the detailed presentation which you presented right now, and giving us a perspective on different kind of challenges which generally people face during work from home scenario, and threats coming from the cyberspace. So there are two questions which I am seeing right now in the question box. One is that what are the this is from Mr. Sachin Patil. He's asking that what are the credentials mandatory for expert or a forensic witness to be admissible on cyber forensic topic under the Indian Evidence Act or maybe Indian IT Act?
What are the if you could just
Credentials. He's asking what kind of credentials which are mandatory for maybe for an expert or forensic witness to be admissible on cyber forensic topic under the Indian Evidence Act or Indian IT Act.
Okay, so whenever there is any kind of electronic evidence, generally what a party does is either they produce the evidence themselves. That could be an the actual device itself. It could be a primary piece of evidence. We follow the best evidence rule in India. So either we give that gadget, and that is the evidence, or one could take a printout of the particular screenshot or an email or otherwise, and file it along with the Section 65B certificate. That will be the chief technology officer of the company who would sign the same and say that this is from that system, and you are not able to obviously produce the entire system because of maybe other documents which are confidential, or it's in the server or otherwise, and then you're giving this particular thing. As regards forensic services, if you're taking the help of a particular forensic like a qualified forensic expert, then what he needs to describe is that he has imaged the data and given it in the court by deploying which processes, what software has been used, which hash mechanism has been used. That needs to be there, and obviously he needs to be a certified forensic expert, a qualified forensic expert. And the EEE is an organization like a officer, examiner of electronic evidence under the IT Act. Is the body which there have been certain cyber labs which have been notified by the government of India to act as EEE, where they would be having a final say on the evidence, whether this is actually genuine, authentic or not. So it's like an expert witness. So when there is a like a controversy, or there is a conflict or dispute for a particular piece of evidence, whether this is credible or not, the EEE gives a final say. It's like calling an expert witness in the court of law, and he deposes there. So ultimately there are two things. One is the admissibility part, which is to prove that this evidence is admissible or not in a court of law, which will require either a primary piece of evidence to be filed, or a secondary evidence needs to be proven through the certificate which is to be filed. or and then comes the weightage of the evidence, and to prove that, that is something where the expert witness would come or a witness would be examined on the same. So that is a second part of proving an electronic evidence.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. So another question goes to an example. Mr. Nikhil is asking, ma'am, is in a case where a video chip of an interview given by a business house explaining the services they offer on TV is used by a competitor without the original business house permission, is it an IPR infringement or just any other crime?
If a video chip is like a video has been used.
It's a video clip basically. Sorry, not chip. It's a video clip of an interview given by a business house explaining their services on TV, and it is taken by a competitor and without the permission of the original that business house. They so it
Okay,
is an
yes.
IPR infringement or any other kind of a crime.
Yeah, it is definitely IPR infringement. One needs to understand this falls under copyright law, and there is a violation there. I mean, that can be, injunction can be claimed, and damages can be claimed for the same. But if one is able to prove that it was stolen from their systems, then it also becomes hacking. It really depends on the facts, how this particular video really reached them. If it was already in the public domain on say internet, then it will just be a copyright infringement. But if it was not available otherwise, and it was stolen from their systems, it would also be a hacking case. So it really depends on the facts of every case.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Rohit Raman is asking, do you see enactment of a law in near future which mandates every organization to have a robust cybersecurity policy and architecture? Usually people are more reactive than being proactive. So isn't it really a high time that a person responsible should be bound to protect the data and information? So basically the question is about the law. Is it coming in near future or?
Yeah, it's our safety actually lies in our own hands. Just like people used to keep their checkbooks very carefully in the earlier times, we need to keep our passwords very carefully now, and have our policies in place so that we have clear directions and mandates and guidelines for our employees, and how they need to use information and protect the data of companies. So even in the current regime, IT Act, the mandate for protecting financial data like credit card information or otherwise is on the person whose account it relates to. So if it's a consumer, he is in charge of the same. Similarly, if you're an organization who's handling people's data, for example, or even your own organization, your own sensitive data, the safety lies in your own hands, that like that. So under section 43A, companies who collect other people's data, they are anyway supposed to keep their data safe. Otherwise, they will be sued for compensation and other remedies. As regards your own data, you have to prevent loss. So that is something that the law says you need to keep your password secure. Any kind of policy measures, organizations need to keep that in order, because under section 85 of the IT Act, the director's liability is there, deemed liability of directors. So unless they maintain due diligence practices, they avoid negligence, and they are proactive, they will not be able to prove that they have taken adequate measures and monitoring measures to safeguard people and their organization, and their data. So there is deemed liability of directors, so one has to be vigilant, and therefore one of the good practices is to have right policy measures in their organization.
Thank you, ma'am. In favor of time, I would take this last question, ma'am. So Mr. Samir is asking, how do we address data sovereignty issue with cloud platform? Does METI approved cloud providers? I think he wants to ask, is there any list of providers which METI provides, or anybody else who authenticates some list of providers?
I didn't get your last part of your question. If you could repeat that.
Yeah. So he's asking that how do we address data sovereignty issue with cloud platforms? Is there any credible list of cloud service providers which is given by maybe some government agency, approved by some government agency?
Well, I don't think we can, just recommend names. It will be unfair because there are lots of good providers. But you can look at the amount of information which is available, and there are white papers given by the government. I don't think they endorse any particular softwares. So it's up to you to actually judge whether this is a right service to take or not. I would say that there are some good service providers available, and I don't think maybe the safety manuals that the government comes out with would have certain names and measures, and some indigenous, some our own government might be also. CDAC does a lot of good softwares also, may be helpful, but I cannot say that only 5 names out of say 10 of them would be the right practice to take.
Even the government cannot provide this
Yes,
names,
that would be
from
unfair. That would
providers.
be unfair as a
Correct.
competition. Yeah.
Yeah, they can issue a list, maybe some guidelines to check what
Yes.
can be. Yeah.
Yes, certainly that may be possible, but I don't think we can just say 5 names and say, okay, this is these are the only right players. So to do that.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I do want to
Thank you.
mention one more thing. If somebody is
Yeah.
interested in electronic evidence and understanding this better, there's this latest judgment of Arjun Pandit Rao case, which has considered Anwar versus Bashir case and the Shafi Muhammad case. Very interestingly, and they can look up this Arjun Pandit Rao case. There have been certain interesting exceptions culled out where certificate may not be even necessary to be produced, where a person has tried enough to get the certificate from a third party, but the third party doesn't, produce the same. So that can be explored more through the Arjun Pandit Rao case, if anybody wants to read it up. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much for this detailed explanation on this question. And with this, we come to the conclusion of the 3 days training program. And ma'am, I would like to thank you on behalf of FICCI and NIDM both for joining us as a speaker. And just to give a formal vote of thanks, I have with me here Mr. Sumit Gupta, Assistant Secretary General FICCI, to deliver vote of thanks. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Seth. I heard most of your session, and as always, it was quite informative and very interesting. Thanks for your time and efforts.
Thank you.
In fact, I would like to take this opportunity to thank ED, NIDM, Professor Anil Gupta, and Mr. Michael Isleri for their support and making this program happen with us. And as always, thanks for the opportunity given to FICCI to partner with NIDM and do this particular workshop on a very, very important topic on cyber crime and cyber threat. And I believe during the course of 3 days, we had a lot of interesting topics which we discussed, and there was a lot of takeaways for me personally, and I'm sure a lot of our participants would have definitely benefited out of it. And going forward, we would be conducting many more such workshops, and specifically the topic of cyber is such that the more you do, I mean, it's always not enough, because the threat is so much and there is so much to understand and learn about this. So going forward, we would be further scheduling other programs, be it webinar or the workshop on this particular aspect as well. And I thank all the faculty members for their time and the effort they took and the presentations they made. So on behalf of FICCI and NIDM, I thank all the participants, and I believe all the participants would be receiving the training certificates for which my colleague Gaurav would have already announced. And there's an 80% of mandatory attendance, which is a requirement for the attendance for the certificate. So with these words, I thank you all and look forward to your continued support. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you very much, sir, for this nice vote of thanks. So before closing, I would like to see if any advice or last words from maybe from Sanjeev or Mr. Michael to the participants, for participants? Any advisory which you would like to share?
Michael, you may announce about the process of getting the certificate.
Okay. Am I audible?
Yes, Michael.
Yeah.
Yes. So the participants can log in. The way they log in for the registration, they can find a certificate from the NIDM portal itself, and it will be available maybe in the next three days. I cannot assure you by tomorrow or something. Maybe in the next 3 days, it will be made available from the portal. So once the certificate is ready, you'll receive an email. From there you can log in and then you can download from the portal itself. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Michael, for sharing this information. So I believe all the participants must have benefited out of the 3 days deliberation. We have experts and well-known speakers in the cyber domain with us. So thank you all for attending this session, and we will come up with more such sessions in with support of NIDM in near future. With these words, I would like to thank you again once again, and would like to close this session with your permission. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sanjeev.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you,
Thanks, Michael. I can see Captain Louis also
Captain
here.
Louis is still there. So thank you, Captain Louis.
Yeah.
For being with us for the entire day almost. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. It was really nice having you. Thanks.
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 See you.
Bye.